can't. Success in circuit lies. Okay. So what is she saying? She says that you have to, when you write, you have to, when you write a poem, you have to, when you teach, you have to, when you're using language, tell the truth. But what you require to do is to tell it in a circuitous way, tell it slantingly, tell it slowly, because that's the only way you will be able to make a impression that lasts for a longer time. And somewhere I think that when we look at academic writing or analytic writing and what are the pressures that it involves, this poem comes very much in use. This poem also explains the whole purpose of language, which is sort of to allow ourselves to express ourselves, allow us to take ourselves seriously, allow us to talk about what we feel and what we think. So I'm going to start this session by, setting a sort of space, creating a sort of space in which I can talk to you about academic writing. But at the same time, this is like day 3, is it not, of the conference? So all of you must be up to your ears in
It's day
academic writing. It's day 3, right? Yeah, so day 3 of the conference, everybody must be sort of like up to their ears, and this is a post-launch session also. So let's just see how to go about it, because I'm going to start again with saying how do we identify with academic writing? What do we, think about it? Where does it come from? What is analytic writing? Why do we need analytic writing at all? I think we need analytic writing because, we need to arrive at the truth for each one of us. And we, it's not very easy to arrive at the truth, because the truth can really hurt. Truth can sometimes kill. The truth can destroy. So we have to slowly gather our resources and construct. And I think this is philosophically the space from which analytic writing comes. So when we do analytic writing, at some point we have to make sense to ourselves, and then we have to make sense to whoever it is we are addressing, whoever the reader or the listener is, as the case may be. Okay, so let me put this question to all of you again. Writing is a very integral part of our lives. The act of writing is a skill, and as humans, of course, we speak the most. And particularly those of us who are either receiving an education or imparting one as students or teachers, engage with the written word to the maximum. So the question that we need to ask is, what is exactly in this context of writing is analytical writing? What does this term mean? And what exactly is its relevance in our lives? So a part of our learning and teaching also reflect our engagement with thoughts and ideas about the world we live in. And how does this happen? Very early on in our formative years, in our childhood, we are introduced to the world of letters and numbers. And what is the world of letters and numbers? It is a system of symbols, of sounds and codes that allows us to record information in many ways, in many languages. And this is both quantitative and qualitative, whatever it is that these words tell us. So, we have to start with the assumption that 12 years of schooling, and I'm not counting the nursery and the pre-nursery years at all, 12 years of schooling are supposed to impart certain skills in writing. And at the university, we are required to hone these skills. So, would you all agree that this is a, good way of looking at this is a good way of analyzing what the whole space of writing and self-expression is at the university? Anybody who disagrees with this as an idea? I'm speaking to all these, pictured and lettered icons I can see on the screen. And it means that Manoj has left the meeting, but you all agree in general that this is really how we view writing.
Yes.
And
yes.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So, so when we say that when we say that at the university, which is where we have to hone the skills that go into writing, and we have to look at writing in different ways. Maybe it's a very good idea to just quickly go back to see how writing skills are taught to us, how we learn writing skills, how we work with writing skills when we are not at the university. And of course, We learn the letters of the alphabet and the numericals. These are the codes of all writing. And this knowledge is extremely valuable because this is our basic primer. All our life, as speakers of language and users of language, we work with various letters of the alphabet and symbols and numericals to make our way in the world. So, I mean, I, for instance, operated this gadget because I'm still very tech challenged. So by about 2:30 or 2:40, I had set myself up because I was really scared that if I started at 5 to 3, I wouldn't be able to link in and connect. So this very valuable primer, which is language that we learn, is something that gives us a starting kit. So why is it that I'm still addressing you at this workshop or seminar on analytical writing? Because the schooling system does not deliver. And why does the schooling system not deliver? Because it does away with certain traditions of teaching. So for a minute, I just want to step out of the whole space of analytic writing, and I want you to analyze this history that I'm going to offer to you. We are a country with innumerable languages. I mean, we are so proud of our languages that somebody in the Reserve Bank, I mean, there are people who deal with numbers and money, supposed to have no imagination. Somebody designed our currency, and if you look, you used to have the value of the currency written in so many languages because we're so proud of these innumerable languages that we had. The names of all the languages were not there. The currency value was not written in every language in India, but it had a reasonable number of languages. But in spite of having these innumerable languages, we devised a system where English would be the link language. English is also the language of power. Then we said, okay, this is not enough because there are all these other languages. So we said regional languages. We said, let us make the regional, we as in our people, the planners of our education systems, the dispensers, learning, the people who set up the infrastructure for learning. They said, let the regional languages become the second language all over India. Okay. And then they said, Acha, but there are these root languages also. There are many root languages. There was Pali, there was Prakrit, there was Grantha, there was Apatamba, all such scripts. They were all sidelined. So we fell upon Sanskrit, one language, which is a root language. And then we said, no, Sanskrit is like Latin. It should be found. And so Sanskrit was allowed because it's also the code or the base or the primer for various other regional languages of India. So today, on paper, we have a 3 or 4 language formula in our schools, okay? Where what are the languages in which people learn New Delhi or Calcutta, for want of New Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai? Let's take these 3 places. So you will have English in all these places. In New Delhi, you will have Hindi. In Calcutta, you will have Bengali, and in Chennai, hopefully, you will have Tamil. So in Chennai, Calcutta and New Delhi, there will be second languages. Okay, so this is a pattern that will be followed without exception across the schooling systems in all the small cities, the big cities, and the metropolises of our country. And somewhere in the middle, say class 5, after primary school, in middle school, where all these experiments happen, everybody will get up and say, but this is not enough. There must be a third language, or there must be a fourth language. So what happened then? The schools would say, let's have Sanskrit. So Sanskrit will be introduced in middle school. In about class 6, they'll inflict Sanskrit on you. And they say that now you have to learn this, you have to learn the Shabdroop, you have to learn the Dhaturoop, you have to cram this and cram this. So this is really very bad and unimaginative teaching. Okay, so people say, oh my God, this is such a drag. Who wants to learn Sanskrit? And this is, now already Sanskrit, unfortunately, for itself is being seen as a language that is the language of the elite. We forget that all languages, any language can be the language depending on who and what the elite is. So there's always a lot of objection to Sanskrit as elite, dead language, old world. So people say, no, let's have modern languages. So suddenly, our posh public schools said that let us introduce foreign languages. So let us teach German and French, okay? Because this school is affluent, students come from affluent backgrounds. So instead of Sanskrit, you were given an option to learn foreign languages in middle school. And how are these foreign languages really taught? with all the crunch on funding, which all the crunch on also the fact that there is not so much infrastructure. There are not so many teachers available for so many things. There are no excellent teachers available for any discipline, as a matter of fact, in schools. And I'm saying this on the basis of having sat in at interviews for English teachers, by the way. So I'm not trying to think of other languages. So you would have parents who say, okay, let our child learn French or German or what have you, or Spanish. Spanish is a new flavor, new international flavor at the moment. So then they would appoint tutors for their child at home, or their child would go and do a Spanish or a French or a German class somewhere at Max Muller or at Allianz or at the Spanish Institute. So what is it that we've created by generating this kind of, sort of language cafeteria in middle school? We've had, go back to the main structure: English as a language and a second language, which could be Hindi or Bengali or Tamil or whatever, depending on which state the language was going to be. So you would have students subjected to, or taught other languages very, very badly. And the net result of this is generations of students exposed basically to two languages, maybe a third, but knowing the third language very poorly and forgetting it very, very quickly. And then this brings us to, again, the two language theory. So the thing is that in a school, in most schools, it is possible to work with two languages. But in a school where there is both Hindi and English, let me just show you how this works. After class 8, the school board system, or the university or the school board system, ensure that all children don't need to be proficient in more than one language. So at the end of class 8, you may have studied, let's say, Hindi, English, and Sanskrit up to class 8. In Sanskrit, of course, only between 7 and 8, but anyway, for whatever purpose, up to class 8. So it is possible to drop the second language. After class 8, you don't ever need to do Hindi in your life. If you have a problem with it, you don't ever need to do Bengali in your life if you are a non-Bengali, say. You never need to do Tamil in your life if you are a non-Tamil, because you can learn Sanskrit or French or German after class 8, and then you shift to class 10. And by the time you shift to class 10, you've already been put into three annoying compartments: those of arts, those of science, and those of commerce. So you have then these limited syllabi part structures that you're being exposed to as a young person. And usually these limited syllabi part structures are mostly in English. There are other languages, but these are less in number. Everything is predominantly English schooling, and there is a lot of pressure on people who study or major in a regional language. And sometimes this language can be your mother tongue, which means you're in luck, but sometimes it may only be the language of the state in which you live in. And this is the other question now I need to ask you to look at. When I say that people are taught in English or in Hindi or in Tamil or in Bengali or whatever in schools, we need to look at the fact that what is it they're taught? Are they taught any literature in the second language or the third language? Is no. Very, very rarely. The whole notion of literature, the whole notion of poetry, the whole notion of various genres of fiction, all this is given short shrift in every language. About 2 or 3 years ago, the Delhi board was deciding that certain kinds of poems, because they were sad, should not be part of the course, because there are people who are screening what is the kind of literature that can be made available to people. So the point I'm really trying to make is that, if you want to introduce somebody to a language, if you want somebody to be very proficient at a language, how do you go about it? Let me stop here and ask you. If you want someone to be very good at any language, I'm not saying it has to be English, it could be French, it could be Russian, it could be Japanese, or it could be one of these very, very rich, diverse languages we have in our own country. How would you go about it? I mean, this is a question addressed to everybody, addressed to all these colorful icons I'm seeing and letters.
And from my personal experience, I can say like reading a lot and then
Yeah.
listening any language will help you to, write and speak in that language.
Yeah, that's you're absolutely right, Preeti, because only when you listen a lot to a language, I mean, one of the secrets about any language is it's very easily learned because this is a skill humans are supposed to have. It's like a motoring skill or it's like a motor movement for human beings because human beings don't really move so much. They don't fly. They don't, like cut through water, cut through air. They're just walking on the earth. So language skills are something that the human brain is really equipped to take. And languages are very easily learned, but that's the upside. But the downside of it is that languages are also very easily forgotten. So yes, reading and listening is a very important way to pick up a language. So let me push this question further since you're the only one who's responded. I mean, this is a question addressed to everybody. What kind of reading?
Whatever you like, I started learning English in class 6. That also I
Okay.
started learning from alphabet ABCD. I learned ABCD in class 6. And then
Yeah.
in class 9, we all converted promoted, you can say, or upgraded to whole English medium. So
Okay.
when at that moment I started, reading my science book and social science book, rigorously, not from the textbook, but the other author books I was reading line by line, and then many a time, and then I started reading newspaper, and that's how I picked up it up.
Okay. So good. So you did great work with the materials that are available at your disposal. But suppose I'm talking about, let's say, ideal materials. How can you create a love or a joy? English also the problem with saying that makes oneself proficient in English. It's also the language of power, isn't it? It's also the language of mobility, as it were. I mean, you using the word upgraded to Hindi. I mean, upgraded to English. So we see this as a certain kind of mobility that this language provides. So, out of all the languages that we have in our country, English is probably the wealthiest in terms of these support systems and infrastructure and reference materials that are available. But I mean, theoretically, and this is a question I'm putting to the class, if you want somebody to be completely enchanted by a language, how would you work with it?
I think you have to read a lot of literature because
Okay.
the characters are interwoven, the way they talk to each other, the way they express their feelings and emotions. So you automatically, if you read a lot of literature, it automatically comes to you. It
Yeah,
becomes
excellent,
your
Pushpa. I
some
was really
part
hoping
on
that.
your language.
Sure, excellent. Because I mean, I was really hoping that one of you would give me this response because, while I was explaining to you all these languages that we are shuffling with in school, what we've created by shutting down access to all languages except in a functional manner. And I'll just explain functional to you in 2 minutes, in a minute. What I would like you to think about is that we have generations of young people who are alienated from not only their mother tongues but also from literatures of literature in any language. And what we unfortunately are doing is pushing people to learn around very limited syllabi part structures, which are mostly in English. And in the schooling system, in every city, in every schooling system, literature is given short shrift in every language. I just want to give you an illustration here. There is a school called Sardar Patel in New Delhi. Have you all heard of it?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. And have you heard good things about it or bad things about it?
Good things about it.
There are lots of good things about Sardar Patel, which is that it's a progressive school. It's a school that is within inverted commas Indian. The best thing about Sardar Patel is that it has a language formula where not only does it teach in Hindi from nursery to class 5, class 6 it makes a changeover into English medium, which is very unusual for a school with the kind of cloud that Sardar Patel has to do. Sardar Patel also does not teach any foreign languages. And, this is what enchanted me about this school. I'm from Tamil Nadu, and I say this not out of pride or out of parochialism. It's just a factual statement that I'm offering you. So I grew up in New Delhi, and my mother taught me the script of my mother tongue. She taught me Tamil. She taught me to read. And we used to speak Tamil at home. So I speak very fluently. I read you know moderately and I write very badly. These are my Tamil learning skills. So anyway, I was excited to put my children into Sardar Patel because I said this is a school that is teaching local languages. So Sardar Patel was teaching Gujarati, Sardar Patel was teaching Urdu, and Sardar Patel was teaching Tamil. And I thought this was such a fantastic representation. So I put my children into Sardar Patel and they learned these languages and they learned Tamil because I wanted them to learn the script. I thought it was simpler to have somebody who was a trained teacher of language to teach them the Tamil language. And before I tell you what happened in this particular school, let me just tell you some of the problems with the Sardar Patel program. Sardar Patel had very good readers for students up to the end of middle school. So, they would have short stories and non-detail in Hindi and in English, which I found that students in other public school were doing in class 8 and class 9, and these would be class 5 and class 6 syllabi, Sardar Patel. But Sardar Patel taught its students science and maths and social studies in Hindi in the primary school. Suddenly, it switched over, and class 6 is teaching everything in English. So the science textbooks, maths textbooks, the social science textbooks were not imaginative enough, were not exciting enough, were not sustaining enough. Then it had a library period again, which was once a week. So you could borrow a big book and bring it back. I don't understand why there should be only one period once a week. So somewhere inside the psyche of schools, they give you 2 sports periods. They give you 1 homeroom period every day, but the library period is really not relevant at all for students to go and choose books. So again, there is not enough exposure to for kids in say connecting with literature, connecting with narratives, connecting with stories. So the problem I found in the school was that a child's skill in a language can't be developed from class 2 to class 6. Then you can't drop it and shift to another language altogether. So this is really the worst way to teach a language because you're not sustaining interest in the language at all. So, and why did these systems fail? I mean, for instance, my children went to learn Tamil. So the Tamil teacher taught them Tamil in English. So they used to speak Tamil at home and they used to write Tamil in English following English phonetics. They never learned the script at all. And it was really very disturbing, very troubling. And this was done as a sort of token for 3 years. Class 6, class 7, class 8, this was dropped completely. And class 8, my children dropped all the Hindi that they had been learning right from class 1 and class 2. And after that, what is it that happens? Because in class 8, you can, of course, do Sanskrit. So you juggle very badly with languages. How these languages taught? They are taught very badly. And grammar, instead of becoming the backbone of everybody's learning experience, and instead of becoming a tool whereby you can use it, becomes a space whereby you cram various kinds of arrangements. I mean, this is how Sanskrit is taught. So Sanskrit is really a boring and tedious process of learning because you are cramming your shabd roots and dhatu roots all the time, and you don't know how to move that mathematical table and construct your own conversations or vocabulary. So, look at the other thing happening in the education system. So you don't have enough literature, you don't have better readings, you don't have daily library periods, there's no infrastructure, very little imagination at work. Instead, something else is happening because mantra not only puts students into 3 different subject categories of math, science, and commerce by the time they're a little old and able to think for themselves, science, arts, and commerce, then it becomes a socializing space where you have the arts types, you have the types, and you have the science types, and you have the commerce types who hang out. And what is it that they do when they are not socializing in school? They're rushing off for tuition classes. So please tell me, in the middle of all this space, when we have given language such low priority, and when I say low priority, language is being used in a very functional manner, And for instance, today, if I say that, I speak 2 languages, I don't. No. If I say I speak 3 languages, I don't. Because I'm speaking to you all in English, which is the language of my skill, which is the language I've been trained in, which is my subject as well. And this is what I'm speaking to you, and this is my workspace. or this is my work life or my public life. The language I speak at home is this. So I could speak to a parent, I could speak to a child, I could speak to an equal, I could speak to a sibling. And these are again spaces, incidentally, where there is some kind of emotional and intellectual connect. But what am I doing with Delhi's language, which is, let's say, Hindi? I speak with in Hindi with the fellow I buy fruits from or vegetables from, or somebody I go to, then I go to the store to pick up something. So I'm usually saying, आपके पास आटा है? Or I'm saying, अच्छा भैया टमाटर कैसे दिया? अच्छा आप कुंदरू नहीं लाए बहुत दिन से? So what are these sentences that I'm constructing? They're grammatically fine. Even the accent, I'm managed. But exactly what am I saying in any of these sentences? I mean, this is language. I'm using language at an extremely functional level. So if I want to say that I'm unhappy, if I want to say I'm upset, if I want to say I'm angry, neither Tamil nor Hindi is coming to be of any use to me. So please see how I have become a wretched one language person. I've become monolingual. That is the other word for it. And what is it that I'm doing with the other two languages that I'm pretending I know? I'm using them very minimally. I'm using them very descriptively. I'm using them at a very functional level. And this is what the school systems have provided for us. So it's not very, it's not very difficult to understand why we are not, we have never trained to write and speak analytically, because we don't respect ideas, we don't respect languages at all. And we have created a terrible separation from between the users and the language itself. So the users of language are really, pushed as far away from the use of language as is possible. So this is the teaching methodology that each one of us has been subjected to. And we need to sort of understand how much this teaching methodology has harmed us and continues to damage us. So I'm going to stop for a second because I just wanted to get a sense of what I mean by descriptive writing. And this is just going to be an oral exercise. Okay, so I just want you to, not think at the moment about all these things I've said, just switch off for a couple of seconds. And I want you to focus on your years as a student. I want you to focus on a happy memory in your classroom. Okay, it's a moment that is private, that is a moment of self-discovery, which is what learning is supposed to be. Not a moment when somebody was clapping for you, or a moment where you were a star, or a moment when you got good marks, but just a moment when you understood something or learned something in the process of the teaching, reading, writing process. So, I just want you to go back and think, and because now I'm just going to ask you what this moment was. So you will have to think, and then we will, everybody can start speaking. And I'd like to find some paper and write this down, write down whatever you're saying. So it's complete silence, so I hope you're all thinking back in time to some moment in your learning, which was private, but which gave you a lot of joy, which is what learning and language is really supposed to do all the time, except it doesn't. Yeah, okay.
Can I begin, ma'am?
Priyanka, yes. Shall I just write down? Tell me.
So, it's a very personal memory, but the first thing I remember was in the school library when I first held a copy of Enid Blyton, and felt happy that I could choose a book for myself.
Okay.
Because earlier, as primary kids, we were just used to be taken around the library with the help of the teacher, and just look from a distance, and come back to class. So I think I was in grade 6 when we were issued 2 library tickets, and we could get books for ourselves. We could really touch and feel them.
How idiotic this is.
Yes.
We send our kids to school and we say, तुम किताबों को देखो क्यों? तू जाएंगी क्या? Use करने से क्या? I just don't understand this at all, and it happens at the most expensive schools.
Right.
And we kids touch books, but we want them to be great readers, and we pretend that unlike other countries, education starts here at the age of 4. So, I mean, it is such a setback to not
Right.
allow children free use of the library, At
Yeah. So
least
they were
twice a day they are allowed the playground, but the library ground, which is reading ground, is not available at all. Yeah,
right.
anyway, thank you. Thank you for this lovely memory.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Sunita.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Sunita from
Mm.
Lakshmi College. Ma'am, as a teacher in the school, working as physical education teacher, and
Okay.
there we used to get time for library. Sometimes
Mm.
whenever we were free.
Yeah.
So there I started learning the book of means Mills and Boons.
Okay.
That was very creative stories, and
Mm.
sometimes it was very secretive and type of. I really that time I was teacher, but I started enjoying those stories. I don't know
Okay.
मैंने शायद अपने बचपन में वो नहीं पढ़ी थी, but
Mm.
जब मेरे को वो मौका मिला तो I started enjoying those stories.
सुनीता जी, बचपन में तो मिल्स एंड बून हम पढ़ते नहीं,
नहीं
पढ़ नहीं सकते, जवानी में पढ़ते हैं। आई एम श्योर आपने
हाँ,
जवानी में पढ़ा।
तो मैंने
एंड
जवानी में ही पढ़ा।
हमारे यहाँ ना ये लेंडिंग लाइब्रेरीज होती थी करोल बाग में, जहाँ मैं रहती थी, एंड चन्ना मार्केट में। तो वहां पे हम जाते थे, तो 1 रुपए का ना या 5 रुपए का मेंबरशिप होता था। तो एवरी टाइम कुड गो एंड पिक अप अ बुक, ही वुड विथड्रॉ 50 पैसे, he would subtract 50 paise from our account.
Okay.
So we
But I get a chance in the school only. जहाँ पर स्कूल में काम किया, क्योंकि स्कूल उससे पहले तो अपनी लर्निंग चल रही थी, जो बुक सिलेबस थी वो पढ़ रहे थे, बट उस
Okay.
टाइम में पर्टिकुलरली आई एंजॉयड दोस लर्निंग.
Okay, excellent. So two of you have spoken about the joy of books in a library, and I want everybody to keep a small track of this, because I'm writing this down also. Who's next? Three.
Can it be related to anything? I mean, not just library?
Anything. I only asked for any memory. Doesn't have to be the library. It's a place when you are happy, Pushpa. That's the
I
criteria.
would like to share a school time memory. I was in 11th class.
Yeah.
And our English teacher was, basically talking about a story where a guy was, he had kind of hallucinations. He would think something very scary, etc. In his thoughts, and would really, I mean, it was counting heavily on his health. It was affecting his health very badly. So our teacher, asked us to write a paragraph, a small, paragraph on that. So as I remember, I used a phrase that it was imaginative but destructive.
Okay.
And my class teacher appreciated this phrase so much that, I could think of writing something like that. And she made the class applaud. And I still remember it, just because I was applauded by the entire class and my class teacher.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah.
So you are talking about empathy oval as a space that you enjoyed. Fine. That's thank you for the memory. Okay, who's next?
Good afternoon, Naji.
Hello.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm
Hello,
Manoj
Manoj.
Agarwal.
Yeah. Hello, Manoj.
Yeah, well, I belong to a very small business family in a remote town at West Bengal.
Okay. What's
And
the
there was
name of
no
your town?
Hello?
Name of your town?
Balurghat. It was called Balurghat. It's still called.
Okay. Okay.
Now, though I studied in an English medium school, so-called, only one of them there at that time, there was no culture of, books and literature in my family, being a small business family. So there was no connection with studies per se, if I can say so.
Okay.
So we went to school just because we had to. Now, in class 11, uh, one of our English teacher, he was by the principal of the school, taught us a chapter called 17 Oranges from NCRT book,
Okay.
right? Where a kid stole 17 oranges from a dockyard and hid it in his, overcoat. And he was caught while he was trying to escape because the kid was so poor that he had to arrange for, this thing for his family. But since he was caught, the officer who caught him made him pull out all the 17 oranges, placed him on the desk, and locked the child to call the higher officials. And then when he returned with his higher official, the child has eaten all the 17 oranges with peels and seeds and everything. So there was no trace of orange, and the child was free because there was no proof that he stole.
How
And
interesting.
thereafter, the child never ate an orange in his life, because that was such a experience for him. So this story, though I was not a very attentive student, though I was not the best in the class, to say so, I
But you've
remember
not forgotten this
vividly.
story.
Hanji?
Manoj, but you've not forgotten this story.
Yeah, the vivid, So this
Fine.
was one learning experience that I had. And
Okay.
similarly, there was a story named Mark of Vishnu, about a child having faith in Vishnu and finally being bitten by a snake, because he was going down, because of this Vishnu mark on the forehead of the cobra,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
he was killed. So these two stories left a everlasting impression on me,
Okay.
so I remember that as a very fond memory of taking out something out of a class when I was not doing that for other classes then.
Okay, interesting. I'm also noticing that up to now, I'm getting responses from you which have to do with stories, moments of joy which have to do with books or with stories that were taught in class. Nobody's telling me that a maths problem blew off the top of their head, or that success in a science experiment, was fluoride salts, which are blue in color. Nobody's telling me that blew off the top of the head. But anyway, but this is
Hi.
not. Yes, hi,
Uh, Hi.
Anisha.
I was, oh, yes, Manish. I was actually, my parents were school teachers.
Okay,
So from very early childhood, I had access to books.
okay.
It's like every week I will get 2 to 3 books. Sometimes they will read to me.
What a lovely
Sometimes
childhood I have, Manisha.
they read. Yeah,
Lovely
yeah,
childhood. Yeah, what a
yes.
privileged childhood. Yeah.
Sometimes they read, and sometimes I also read storybooks. But the book I remember was Roald Dahl, I think BFG, the Big Friendly Giant, wherein he had used some words which the giant, created on his own. So at that time, I was also impressed by this, and I thought that I can also make my new words. But
Yeah.
later on, yes, but later on, as I, in the middle school, I realized that I was scoring very good in maths and science, and I was getting more appreciation for securing high marks in maths and science. So
Okay.
somehow I stopped reading storybooks. I focused more into math and science. Every the target was to get 100%, 100 out of 100, 100 out of 100, something
Okay.
like that. So I got 97 in my board exam, and it was a disappointment. Why 97? Why not 100?
That's
So,
it.
yeah. But what I'm trying to say that in spite of that environment at home, which was literally friendly and giving me that
Yeah. Giving you that
maths
space.
and science were, applauded more as compared to achievement in English or Hindi or Sanskrit, because I also in that particular year in class 10th in my board exam, I also scored something 98 in Sanskrit, but that was okay. But 97 in mathematics was considered a great achievement. So somehow I, I felt that, achievement in science and maths is important as compared to achievement in language. So
Yeah,
probably,
fine, Manisha, because this is the predominant approach. I remember a point when in middle school, my parents used to encourage me to read. But in middle school, or when it was time for the exams on middle school, around class 9th and 10th, I would be told, can you stop reading your storybooks and can you pay attention to your textbook? Can you work on your maths? Because, you're not exactly brilliant at maths. So the storybook became some kind of contraband. Anything that didn't have to do with the subject, if it was literature, if it was a story, it became contraband. And parents do this, or the system does this. If the parents don't, because there are first generation educated parents, the second generation educated parents, there are parents who are working professionals. All these vary, but the storybook becomes contraband, and you read it secretly. When we were growing up, comics were contraband because they were seen as a bad influence. They were seen as spoiling our language and as reducing our ability to read. So you had to hide and read comics, or you had to borrow them from the lending library, or you had to read them in the summer vacations. So, these are all the various categories in which different kinds of reading and enjoyment is categorized for us. But, what you're saying is very interesting, because you are demonstrating to me that if something is put as important and assuring mobility, then and something that wins approval as well, because all of us want to be liked. Even as I'm talking to you, and I can't see any of you, but I'm still hoping that you are responding to what I'm saying. I'm making a connect. So approval is something that we look for as human beings all the time, because we are terribly increasing, whether we want to admit it or not. So, but the thing is that, if you see, for instance, that, okay, this is something I'm good at and people appreciate what I'm doing, then you're very keen to work towards that. Then you develop an interest towards that. But all I'm trying to say, Monisha, is that it doesn't have to be either or. It could have always been and, but we don't have a system of education which promotes the both hand. We only have either. We only
Yes,
have
you're
either
absolutely
or.
right.
Okay. We only have either or, and it is so frustrating because I don't know why we are battling our lives with this. And the irony is, this is the kind of binary that's there in every situation in life. I mean, you can't, for instance, category of women, for instance, you either had to be bright or you had to be beautiful. You couldn't be gifted and beautiful, because there were these categories in which everybody had to fit. And I think one of these examples of how this was done was, and we talk about a democracy, we talk about equal opportunity, we talk about equal rights. We're shouting this in every country in the world. Does anyone remember this opening ceremony of the Chinese Olympics a few years ago? I'm very bad with numbers, I must confess. But this opening ceremony, I'm drawing your attention to it, is that there was a song that was being sung. And this was a fabulous song. It was being sung by a Chinese girl. It was in the opening ceremony, very pretty girl. And it was a great pleasure to watch. And after the event happened, the newspapers were full of this shocking report which said that this Chinese girl was put there and the world saw her face, not because she was actually singing the song, but because she was very beautiful. And what about that beautiful voice? That belonged to a girl who was not so visually appealing. So here, interpretation, whose visual team decided that beauty came first, and that other talents were secondary. So they took away that girl and pushed her into the sound waves and gave us the visual waves of somebody who was strikingly good looking. So this is the kind of binary in which our world operates in every department. So if you feel at a point that you did this, and this is, by the way, this is analytical thinking that you're just offering. You say, okay, these are the reasons why I didn't read, although I had this set up. It's because nobody's trying to allow us to develop our full potential. And what we always need to remember is that it is only literatures in different languages that allow us to be most human, that allow us to really think and push the envelope of thought. And why is that important? Unless we push the envelope of thought, unless we push the envelope of thought to include, we will not be able to differently be able to get any kind of new ideas. And this is why analytic thinking is important. Okay, I'm going to stop here for a moment and ask if there's anybody else who'd like to speak.
Yes,
Yeah, sure. I would really like everyone to speak, because this is going to be a class in which we are really going to share our experiences. I mean, none of you are in kindergarten, none of you are in primary school or secondary school. I mean, you're all university and citizen. So,
एक्चुअली मैं पढ़ने में बहुत ज्यादा तेज थी और सभी क्लासेस में फर्स्ट आती थी, लेकिन एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज जीरो।
ओके
तो मेरी टीचर हमेशा कहती थी कि उसमें पार्टिसिपेट करो, आगे कॉलेज में जाके वो ज्यादा मैटर करेंगी। तो मैं मानती नहीं थी। एक दिन उन्होंने जबरदस्ती एक कंपटीशन में मुझे भेजा, तो मुझे कोई प्राइज नहीं मिला। तो लेकिन उन्होंने कहा हिम्मत नहीं हारनी। दूसरी बार उन्होंने फिर भेजा और मैं फर्स्ट प्राइज लेकर आई। तो वो शायद मेरी जिंदगी का सबसे, स्कूल लाइफ का सबसे
ओके, हाउ इंटरेस्टिंग। और क्या कंपटीशन था जिस
वो था, डिबेट कंपटीशन था।
ओके, तो बोलने का कंपटीशन था।
हाँ,
अच्छा, excellent. तो अभी तक 6 people have spoken. I just hope there'll be 3 or 4 more people who will speak. I mean, I'd be happy if everybody in this group spoke. Who's next? Well, I'm also. Hi.
Seema, hello.
Seema. Hi, Seema.
Hi, ma'am. I have a little different kind of approach towards reading. I did not have that kind of support. Like, ऐसा नहीं था घर में सब बहुत पढ़ने के लिए एनकरेज करते हो, सब खुश होते थे कि मैं अच्छा ठीक ठाक हूँ पढ़ाई में। बट आई वॉज वेरी फॉन्ड ऑफ बुक्स। मुझे जो मिलता था मैं वो पढ़ती थी। मुझे कोई मिल जाए मैं स्टोरी पढ़ूंगी, मुझे कोई पोयम मिल जाए पोयम पढ़ूंगी। used to draw inspiration from the quotes of from the poem.
Okay.
And मतलब जब छोटे थे तो कुछ मैगजीन्स आती थी, चंपक, नंदन, मधु मुस्कान, चंदा मामा। तो वो उसमें बहुत इंटरेस्ट रहता था, जहाँ से भी मिल जाते थे। थोड़े से बड़े हुए तो किसी के यहाँ पढ़ा हुआ देखा, सरिता मिल गया या कॉलेज का मैगजीन मिल गया, तो जो मिलता था वो पढ़ते थे। कॉम्पिटिशन की तैयारी किया तो प्रतियोगिता दर्पण कॉम्पिटिटिव उसमें शिफ्ट हो गया एंड इट वाज ऑल अलोंग विद माय स्टडीज। कभी I was not among poorest also, backbenchers भी नहीं थे, but top 5-10 में तो हमेशा आ जाती थी। Then later on BCom किया, उसके बाद फिजिकल एजुकेशन लाइन में मैं भी चली गई। स्पोर्ट्स ज्वाइन किया तो नेचुरली वो उसमें एक अट्रैक्शन ज्यादा उसमें आ गया अचीवमेंट आने से, तो फिर प्रोफेशनल बुक्स की तरफ ध्यान चल गया। एंड आई हैव माय पर्सनल लाइब्रेरी एट होम। मुझे जो किताब अच्छी लगती थी मैं उसकी फोटो स्टेट करा के बाइंड करा के अपने पास रख लेती थी। अभी थोड़ा कम हो गया, बट एक्शन होगी आसानी से नहीं मिलती होगी लोगों को। जहां भी मैं लाइब्रेरी में जाती थी, मैं बुक्स तो मुझे मिलती थी, मैं उनको लेके आ जाती थी। कितने पैसे खर्चो तो कभी नहीं सोचती थी। उसी टाइम पे मुझे जो अट्रैक्ट किया, मुझे शिव खेड़ा की जो राइटिंग्स होती थी, बुक्स थी, वो मुझे बहुत अट्रैक्ट करती थी। जो मिल जाती थी स्टेशन पे बेचते हुए, ट्रेन में कहीं भी आते जाते, वो बहुत अट्रैक्ट करती थी। एंड देन आई रेड अ बुक who was suggested by one of my colleagues, who moved my cheek.
Yes.
Who moved my cheek. और मतलब क्या इंस्पिरेशनल वो लगी मुझे बुक। So I think books has the power to alter your personality.
Completely.
Inspiration from anything. एक छोटा सा हिंदी हो, इंग्लिश हो, एक छोटा सा सेंटेंस, एक छोटा सा वर्ड आपको एक अलग वर्ल्ड में ले जाता है, एक्टिव मोड में या पैसिव मोड में। कभी जोश भर देता है, वो श्रृंगार रस में भी ले जाता है और वीर रस में भी ले जाता है। तो आई थिंक
आपको पता है सीमा, एक थे कवित्री थी जिनका नाम था एलिजाबेथ बैरेट ब्राउनिंग। उन्होंने इंग्लैंड में चिल्ड्रन के राइट्स के बारे में एक कविता लिखी। उनकी कविता पढ़ के इंग्लैंड में जो पॉलिटिशियंस थे, जो मेंबर्स ऑफ पार्लियामेंट थे, पॉलिटिशियंस तो आज का शब्द है, जो मेंबर्स ऑफ पार्लियामेंट थे 19th सेंचुरी में, उन्होंने और बात करी और उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं, हम बच्चों से काम नहीं करा सकते, बच्चों से हम मेहनत मजदूरी नहीं करा सकते। तो कविता और शब्द में इतनी शक्ति है। और अगर हम इस एपिसोड के से हट के हम हिटलर की किताब के बारे में सोचें, माइन कैम्प जो हिटलर ने लिखा था, हिटलर की ये जो पर्सनल बुक थी, ऑटोबायोग्राफी थी, this was the book that was the founding book for the political history of South Africa. तो वहां पे उन्होंने अपार्थाइड प्रैक्टिस करी इसी एरोगेंस से कि एक जात या एक रेस is more superior, powerful and deserves to treat other people badly. That white skin is better than black. White skin is superior to black. So, books can build, books can change. We keep talking about the power of the pen versus the power of the sword. So there is a huge energy that is there in writing, and it's the most powerful tool we have. And if it's used well, I mean, we can do wonders with it. We can transform the world. Otherwise, we can make it hell as well. I know I agree with what you're saying. And thank you for giving us so many inputs. And of course, Imaji, you have to find somebody who asks you, "Is there something I can read?" And you must give them a book, some recommendations. So I feel that as teachers, as educators, we have to be in a place where we've read enough books, we've read enough literature, we've read enough material to tell people, yes, you must read this book because this will make a difference. And I'm so glad you are telling the rest of us and all of us about Shiv Khera and about your fascination for collecting books. I must tell you that I share the same obsession with book collecting because, just like you talked about reading Champak and Sarita and so on and so forth. I grew up in years when there was a hunger for anything. So whatever I found, whatever was available, I would open the page and start reading. And even today, if I'm being driven somewhere, then I'm looking at various signposts, names of shops, names of streets, and reading them because it's become a reflex habit. If I see something printed in a language that I know, then I immediately set myself to reading it. It's like it's become Pavlovian almost for me. Okay, thank you for this story. And who's next? Amarjeet, you don't want to speak?
Yeah, I want to share one memory. When I was writing my thesis, myself, Ranjita Srivastav, and I'm from physics faculty. So when I was writing my
What does your name mean, Tri Ranjita?
Ranjita means Ranga Hua, and three is just a subscript for that.
Okay, it's not three colors.
No, not exactly.
Okay. All right.
So when writing my thesis, it is obviously very stressful. So at that time, I don't know what fascinated me that I started reading novels. And within the 15 days or so, I read so many novels back to back. And sir was also like, why aren't you writing your thesis? And this was like stress reliever for me. And then after that, I very soon finished my thesis as well.
Okay, so what was your thesis on?
That was on plasmonic waves.
All right. So, I find that a lot of people who do science are always looking forward to a literature class. Many years ago in Delhi University, we used to have texts for the science students, which were from literature. So we had poems, we had plays, sometimes we had a full-length novel. And suddenly somebody went mad in the university and they said, no, science students ke liye, we have to teach them academic writing. We have to teach them technical writing. Okay, so they introduced a whole course called technical writing. I don't know whether you're familiar with this thing. And they said for commerce students, we must teach them business writing. So they threw out literature, they threw out poems, novels, short stories, intelligent essays, discursive essays, and substituted with this. So some of the students who came, and these were students from biochemistry. These are students from biological sciences and biochemistry. So they actually came up to me and they said, ma'am, we signed up and we took this as our subsidiary subject because we really wanted a space in which we could, relax or just think about something that didn't have to do with the stressful research and the laboratory work that we're doing. So we can't understand why we should learn how to write reports. And I was telling them, the thing is, I'm teaching literature. I don't know how to tell you how to write these reports. So what is the point of saying you must have an introduction, you must have a body, you must have a conclusion, you must draw charts? And surely the teacher who's teaching you, who's working with you in the lab can give you this instruction. Or surely there's some wretched format available for all this. So with this whole class of students, 125 of them, I did a play. I did an ordinary play which nobody had heard of, but they all read the play. I made them read a book. I made them write a review. And then we had the person who had written the play come to speak to them. And they really enjoyed this so much because for them it was a learning space. And sometimes I really think that one should engage with the makers of syllabi and ask them to stop destroying languages and literatures in the way that they are doing, because they are extremely valuable. Not only are they learning spaces, they're also spaces in which you can stretch, in which you can, relax, in which you can unwind, in which you can just be comfortable. And somehow, increasingly, we are losing sight of this very important faculty that, or power and energy that words have, that sentences have, that language has, that writing has. All right. So I'm going to thank you.
Yeah, even I'll just share my experience, motivated by other participants. Like
Yeah.
everybody shared, I'm Tripti Basi from LSR College.
Hi,
And,
Tripti.
yes, I've had rich exposure to literature since early childhood, because my parents introduced me to different kind of genres of, that were available in
Okay,
the
how
city that I
wonderful.
grew up. And, gradually, because my mother is very fond of Hindi literature, so I read about Amrita Pritam, Shivani, and their novels, and I read about women empowerment, and in a very specific manner. And later on, when I went on to do my thesis on Sikh women's education, so then I
Oh,
realized,
this is so fascinating.
yeah,
Sikh women's education.
right.
Okay.
So I submitted, and it was awarded at Jawaharlal Nehru University. So I
All right.
realized that, I
Which
need to learn.
department was this, Tripti? I'm sorry to
Uh,
interrupt you, but
this
I'm
is
also.
Zakir Hussain Center for Educational Studies.
No. Which department do you do this in?
Which course?
I mean, this your PhD. Which department did you enroll with?
This is Sociology of Education at Zakir
Okay.
Hussain Center, Jawaharlal Nehru University.
Okay.
So in the course of my work, I realized my thesis is going to not get a shape unless I learn Gurmukhi. So that is when I sat with grandparents, my grandfather particularly, and I learned how to read, and also at that time write in Gurmukhi, because I had to refer to sources in Patiala, Amritsar. I visited different places in Punjab. So that when I learned Punjabi, I realized that you read same work in that original language, get to know about that culture. And it is so very important and enchanting.
And so enriching, no?
It is enriching.
Because a translation never provides. Translations only have their own creation. I agree so much with you. My grandfather, his father used to write poetry in the Grantha script.
Okay.
My grandfather was the only person in our house who could read it. So I have a copy of his poem, this religious poem that he's written.
Right.
And nobody knows how to read it, And then this book, if you open it, is just going to fall apart. And there's nothing one can do. So this is what we are doing to languages.
And over these number of generations, I feel our kit of, languages, instead of becoming more diverse, we are becoming more stuck to only English or Hindi. But as far as, my grandfather, he was fluent in French as well as Punjabi, Urdu. Urdu I don't learn from him, but all his communication with different relatives used to be in Urdu, because Urdu was main language of Punjab before independence. So I think language and culture, society, they are very important, and their interface that they share with each other needs lot
it's so vital. Absolutely.
Yes.
So I just don't know what we are going to do to. We have to do everything we can to breathe life blood into this thought, into this idea. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Please share link to your Jamboard. Also, I missed that because of network issues.
I know. I just wrote one line on it. Tripti, I'm a technological dinosaur. Let me confess to you. So this is just a line from a poem in which this poet, whom I'm very fond of, I mean, she's one of my favorite poets, Emily Dickinson. She just says that you have to tell the truth. It's a poem. She says, "Tell the truth, but tell it slant." Because success in circuit lies.
Right.
So, it's talking about writing, talking, conversations.
Right.
How you must tell the truth, you must tell it gently so that people are willing to listen.
Right.
She actually says, don't go about telling people that they're wrong, but, work at it in a very different way so that they can see the truth that you want to offer them. I thought it was a very beautiful poem because we were talking about analytical writing.
Right.
I thought it really fitted the mood of
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else who wants to come up and share? This is again a very difficult process because we have a culture that teaches us to efface ourselves. We have a culture that teaches us to remain silent. Yeah, hi. Thank you for to speak, Anil.
Ma'am, I found that, see, I'm teaching sociology in Matric College. I
Okay.
did my graduation in political science and sociology. What I
Mhm.
found that without having knowledge of literature, one cannot understand the society. For example,
Absolutely.
I read many books about society. That's a sociological book, quote unquote sociological book, textbook. But that
Hmm.
is not giving the insight. I mean, if you go to the field, if you go to the
Yeah.
society, if you go to the market, if you go interacting with neighbors or understanding the child, even to understand the children up to 10
Yeah.
year or 5 year, you cannot understand without having knowledge of literature. And I was in conversation with my PhD guide, and who also taught in Columbia University. And when after returning from the Columbia University, he says that in the Western countries they are focusing on the literature. That say for example, if you want to be good social scientist, even good politician, even good economist, even good psychologist, or so on, then
Hmm.
one must need to have the diverse knowledge first, and they must read some literature, because literature is giving insight which is not so, I mean, quote unquote hard fact and so on, but that is giving insight that how common people are thinking. Why this is important? Because all of us ultimately have to serve the society, and society, I mean,
Absolutely.
everyone is not having the PhD degree, everyone not having a
Nobody
doctor and
needs
so
a
on.
PhD degree, Anil Kumar.
Yes,
Unless you
right,
want
right,
to
ma'am.
teach, unless you want to teach in Delhi University,
Right,
join
right,
the department. अब तो colleges में भी आ गई हैं
right,
professorships.
right, ma'am.
तो फिर
So,
आपको PhD डिग्री उसी के लिए चाहिए और
right,
उसका
right.
कोई माने ही नहीं है हमारे समाज में.
Yes,
But yes,
and
this is something very. I wanted you to. This is something I've thought about so often. So let me share with you. हम लिटरेचर कहते हैं ना, एक टाइम पे जब हम लिटरेचर कहते थे, वी मेंट पोएम, ड्रामा, प्ले,
right, right,
फिक्शन, so what we meant. अब आप देखिए, you would say there is a wealth of literature on the effects of this drug,
right,
wealth of literature on the side effects of this pesticide. You feel like saying, what is this nonsense? Why don't you just say data?
right,
Because
right,
that's data literature. Just
right,
10
right.
people have put data together and given you a terrible argument, doesn't become literature. So
Right, right.
वर्ड्स को भी देखिए हम कैसे यूज करते हैं, कितने
And and
केयरफुली यूज करते हैं.
and also later on, my wife, she was pursuing, now still pursuing PhD on American literature, and sometimes we have the conversation that, see, I didn't read those authors, of course, but
Hmm.
I found that she's pursuing PhD on John Steinbeck. He's a Nobel laureate from US.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I found that whatever he wrote is more sociological. So I'm reading that. Sometime I used to read her novel or what she's writing in her PhD. That's very sociological. And
Yeah.
so I
No,
see
Anil,
that.
absolutely right. A time in life when I have that instead of taking English, I take instead of taking up English literature, I wish I had taken sociology.
Right,
Because
ma'am.
the science of sociology gives you such useful information, and what I like most about it, it's non-judgmental. It's only
Right, right,
recording what is happening, and it's very fascinating because it doesn't trouble you with dates like history always does. And it's not telling you lies, it's looking at patterns, how people behave, what is good behavior, what is the thinking involved. And I find that very, very fascinating. So,
right,
sociology
ma'am.
is a fabulous discipline. And
Right, ma'am.
any good sociologist will always say that, if without literature, without real literature, not literature
Exactly.
of some drug,
No,
without
yeah, right, ma'am.
without real literature, there is no space for learning at all. Okay, thank you. This was
Yes.
excellent. I just need one more person, one more volunteer. Can I ask for? Did you want to say something more, Anil?
Yeah, ma'am. Say for example, one of
Mm,
my friend, he wanted to study one movement called Triveni Sangh in Bihar.
yeah.
So the problem is that that movement was happened during British period, and no
Mhm.
one has wrote about that. Okay,
Okay. Mm,
so how to research about that? How to know about that? So Faniswanath Renu, he is a novelist
mm,
from Bihar. I mean, I think some of you may
yeah.
know him. So, okay, so that novel is become the biggest source to know about the Triveni Sangh. because he wrote about Trivedi Young, about their characters, and someone, not C, he wrote one novel called Pala Anchal, based on that event. Many times literature becomes the source of the history, source of the knowledge, because where everything is lost.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, this is a very useful input. And I just want to add, I teach my students the Mahabharata. So I tell them that, if you go up to the hill, go beyond, if you go to these mountains, what are they now? I've forgotten the name. What are these mountains up there in the north where there is a Hidimba temple? Kulu Manali. So I would tell my students that if you go beyond Kulu, if you go around the hills of Kulu and Manali, there's actually a temple to Hidimba. And who is Hidimba? In our popular mainstream Hindu imagination, she is a demon, no? And she's also the wife of Bhim, but she's a demon. So I feel that, this is a text that is giving you an older culture in which somebody who's described to be a Rakshas or a demon is actually has a temple to her name. So the whole notion of how we perceive the other, how we perceive words changes once there is a story. Or sometimes there's no concrete evidence. It helps us to interpret the story much better. So sometimes stories also have their referrals. You can take them back to real life and look at them in a very, very different manner. So when I was teaching the Mahabharata, the idea that, Duryodhan and the rest of the Kauravas could, for instance, have an opinion of their own was suggested to me by the fact that parts of in northern India, in the hilly districts, these are families that are worshipped. And why go so far as a hill? Somewhere in Noida, there is a temple which celebrates Ravan at Diwali. So, the point is that cultures have ways of working with stories, and stories come from different parts of the world. So, it's a very powerful space of learning. It's a very powerful space where different kinds of ideas are allowed to coexist.
Ma'am, may I add something?
Yeah.
Ma'am, you're right. Actually, we all have read about Ravan and Mahishasur, and I also wrote 2-3 articles on Mahishasur. Even I visited Madhya Pradesh and found there's a temple of the Mahishasur, and they said that he was the very wise king. I found temple in where Varanasi. I found temple in Karnataka, and also I found temple of the Ravan in Noida. Okay, so no, even I visited. I visited these places, and for the traditional literature, if you go to even Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Madhya Pradesh. So for them, he was the king, and he was the wise king. He was the just king, and he was doing the justice. So actually, I visited those places with help of my friend, because I don't know Kannada and all these languages. So how the literature, say for example, if you are, ma'am, I was listening you very carefully from the beginning. So if no, here we are making the curriculum to promote one thing and suppress one thing, not only
everything else. They're not suppressing one thing.
Yes, ma'am, not only language, but the ideas, the culture, and all those things. Ma'am, you have also mentioned, I think, Hitler. I forgot whether it's a Mussolini, that give me the curriculum of the primary school. I think I exactly forgot the quotation, but he has said that if you give me curriculum, I will rule the nation. It is something like this. So
there's this couple, Romanian couple called Cizescu. So Cizescu was he was, I think, in the 1990s or thereabouts. You can always Google and find out. His wife, her writing, her poems, the rubbish that she circulated was part of school curriculum for years and years before they finally discovered how corrupt and rotten they were and overthrew them. So the thing is that this is really, you control information, then you control everything. That's what is happening. This is a very true situation today. This is a real situation in India. It's a situation the world over.
Exactly. This is what's going on.
Yeah. So okay. Any one more person there's time for, and then I'd like to, just work with all this information, this wealth of inputs that all of you have given me. Anyone else would like to speak, or should I just work from this?
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah,
Arun.
this side Arun Kumar.
Great.
या सो मैं अपनी एक स्टोरी अपनी 10th क्लास की बताना आप सबके साथ चाहूँगा। 10th क्लास में जब हम थे तो उस समय 2010 के अराउंड जब कॉमनवेल्थ गेम चल रहा था इन इंडिया, सो उस समय हम लोग एक प्ले कर रहे थे अतिथि देवो भव। तो स्कूल लेवल पे एक मतलब नॉर्मल कंपटीशन था, तो दिस वाज माय फर्स्ट प्ले ऑन दैट टाइम। तो मुझे वो प्ले अभी तक याद है। सो हम कहीं पे गए थे कंपटीशन में, तो वहाँ से हमने प्राइज जीता था। तो वो मोमेंट मुझे अभी भी रिमेम्बर है। तो उस समय से मतलब वो मतलब हमारे फ्रेंड्स के साथ अभी भी रिमेम्बर जो हमारे क्लासमेट्स थे। तो दिस वाज माय यूनिक मेमोरी।
आपके प्ले का टाइटल भी बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है, अतिथि
या
देवो
अतिथि देवो भव। या
ओके।
सो उस समय हमारा टोटल बेस था मतलब 2 फॉरेनर्स आए थे इंडिया में, और वी आर जस्ट एक्टिंग, और देयर आर ऑटो मतलब व्हीकल जो चालक होते हैं, उन्होंने मतलब उनकी डिसरिस्पेक्ट किया था, तो हमने उनको समझाने की कोशिश की थी। तो इस तरह का हमारा एक स्मॉल सी स्टोरी हमने क्रिएट किया था विद द हेल्प ऑफ आवर इंग्लिश टीचर। तो ये मुझे हमेशा से था, और अभी आप लोग डिस्कस भी कर रहे थे, और आई एम फ्रॉम द कॉमर्स बैकग्राउंड स्टूडेंट, सो मुझे ज़्यादा इसके बारे में कुछ पता नहीं था। लिटरेचर आप जो पढ़ा रहे हैं, तो ज़्यादा लिटरेचर की मुझे नॉलेज नहीं है एग्जैक्टली बताऊं तो मुझे
That's
ओनली
perfectly okay, Arun. लिटरेचर की नॉलेज नहीं है, पर फाइनली देख शेयर्ड मैथ है. That is about experience. That is about emotions. और अभी, I mean, I wanted to sum up what everybody was saying. अभी अगर आप सुनेंगे यहाँ पे जितने लोगों ने बात करी है, उन्होंने जब कहा, मैंने क्या कहा, आप एक हैप्पी मेमोरी इन द क्लासरूम के बारे में मेरे को बताइए, जब आप स्टूडेंट थे, जब when you really enjoyed yourself. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
And so what did everybody say? I said a moment in which you understood something or learned something. And जिसने भी बताया, everybody has talked about happiness, okay?
Yeah.
And they've talked about happiness, they've talked about language, either speaking or reading or hearing something or something written in any language. And it always had to do with an idea. It always had to do with some idea. So, I mean, why I wanted you all to undertake this exercise was because हमारे जो schooling system है, here, I mean, there are people who are talking about how important books are, how they are learning from books, how they are learning to, communicate with people, how they are learning to appreciate people, learning to connect with cultures. आपकी जो अतिथि देवो भव जो आपने play किया, which gave you so much pleasure, it was also about a cultural idea of ours.
Yeah,
ना?
yeah,
ये सिर्फ
exactly.
हमारा idea नहीं है, ये हर धर्म में यही कहते हैं कि तुम्हारे घर कोई आए तो उसे तुम भगवान के समान ट्रीट करो. Every religion, every culture says this.
Yes,
because
ma'am.
It is supposed to be a courteous way of conducting oneself.
Yeah, you are right, ma'am.
Okay. So what I'm really trying to say is, this is why language is so important, and this is why we must always look at the high functions of language. And मैं ये कह रही हूँ कि हमारी जो schooling system में वो क्या करते हैं, they train us in various languages, और वो languages के जो lowest functions है ना, उसी में हमको training देते हैं.
Yes, ma'am. Basically ये कह सकते हैं हम.
And the space, the happiest moment in student lives, the moment when a student has understood a complex idea, the moment when a student has made a connection, this is something that is not celebrated in schools, because the student is not meant to understand, student is not meant to take pleasure. हमारा teaching plan क्या है? Cram करो, memorize करो, और फिर उसको reproduce करो paper. So then what happens to you when you go to take an examination? दस्त निकलती है सबकी, हे भगवान आज एग्जाम है, भूख नहीं लगती, चक्कर आने लगते हैं, because the whole process is one of limited torture. कि भाई आप जाओगे और 3 घंटों में जाके उगल के आओगे. And then what are we doing as a result of this? We go to the university, and the people who come to the university are brain dead young people. And I promise you, all of us were like that when we came in. Brain dead young people, because methods of cramming have been exhausted. They're just like zombies. And look at the system. पहले हमारे को ना ये exam. What is an exam? It's a system in which they're supposed to evaluate. तो आप एग्जाम करके ये जो टर्म है इससे खुश नहीं है, एग्जामिनेशन से खुश नहीं है, ओरल एग्जामिनेशन से खुश नहीं है, वाइवा वो से खुश नहीं है. आप कहते हैं वी विल हैव अ मॉक एग्जाम. अब मॉक एग्जाम का मतलब क्या है? इसका संधि विच्छेद करिए. If you do sandhi vichhed, this expression mock exam, what is the answer you get? It's something that is mocking you. It's not something that you take seriously. So you have a mock exam. Ek mock exam mein nahi rukta ye. You have a second mock exam. And then you have a third mock exam. And then you have the biggest mockery of all, which is the board examination. So you're condensing yourself. And then where does teaching happen? In most public schools in India, at the end of class 11, by August, the mock exams start. By October, the second round of mock exams have happened. By December, the third round of mock exams. So, if सारे time बैठ के आप exams को mock कर रहे हो, तो basically teaching processes are getting mocked, learning getting mocked. And then please look at the textbook. Social studies की teacher would come to class and she would say, ये देखो 24 या 28 lessons हैं इस book में. अब lessons 13 to 24 we are not doing. तो हम क्या करते थे? अपनी किताब निकालते थे, लेसन 13 के सामने एक बड़ा क्रॉस डालते थे, लेसन 24 के पहले 23 के बाद एक बड़ा क्रॉस डालते थे. And nobody ever opened these pages because they were not in the course. So this is really the reality of the education system that we have been trained in for 12 years. So when you have mock exams, when you have restricted syllabus, when you have languages and literatures which are short, where is the space for any kind of learning? And when you learn so little, where is the space for writing? So then school becomes a space where you socialize, you meet a few friends, you have lunch, then after school ends, you rush off for tuitions. And this really is the pattern of schooling that has been in place for the last 3 decades, if not more. And things are only getting worse. So when we come to the university, we come with a very limited training and very minimal development in language skills. So we have only a working relationship with language, and at best, our use of language is descriptive and denotative. So we don't learn to use language. We don't know how to use different languages or any language very, very well. We perform very simple functions of language. Ask you a very short exercise, and show you. I mean, let's not do this exercise. I'll tell you about this exercise that I planned because I was really expecting, younger people. I mean, I wasn't expecting to talk to colleagues. So, if you say, what is the writing that we're all very good at stage? Descriptive writing. Okay. So these are writings which correspond to who, what, when, where questions. Okay. So what is a who, what, when, where question? If you look at the structure of language, these fall into descriptive categories. Or we have toward categories में डालोगे तो who, what, when, where questions have to do with time, place, object, subject. So if I say do a piece of writing, say that describe your surroundings in one paragraph. तो आपके pointers क्या होंगे? Where are you? What are you? What are you doing? What are you wearing? No? Or who are you? These are the only descriptive bits of writing that we do, and these are the only descriptive bits of writing that you really require at another level to finish schooling. Okay? But what you need to do if you are going to look at analytic writing, and this is what I was supposed to be talking to you about, is that yes, we need these elements of description because this is our starting point. This is the base from which we go on to analyze and evaluate. So you need this description. You need the who, what, where, when. Okay? Because the who, what, where, when allows you to set the scene. But what you need to remember is that you need to analyze, diagnose, examine, evaluate the who, what, where, when. I'm going to give you one more example, okay? Descriptive writing focuses on the who, what, where, when questions, okay? But I just want to remind you of the questions that we are set in school. which is also now moving to the university. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I used to joke with my students and say that please don't come to college and think that, you've come with 98% in school. Please don't come to college and think that, those are the marks you're going to get, because the universities are not going to keep up to your school marks. There's no pressure on us. Now there is pressure on universities to give students the same kind of marks they got in school. So I have students who come to me and say, but why are you giving me 6 out of 10 on this essay? So I have to say, excuse me, we're doing literature. You've written an essay for me, 6 is first class, is good. And if it's outstanding, I'll give you 7. But don't think that I'm going to give you 9 out of 10 for a good essay, because I'm not. Because it doesn't work for me. This is not math. It's not calculus. I can't give you, it's not fractions that I'm working at. I'm making an assessment of writing on a set standard of marks. And now we have graded marking systems in place. So it just gets more and more complex. But anyway, I just wanted to go back to the answers that were required of us in school. Have you ever thought the question, you would get a question and it would say, write in more than 50 words. Do you remember this instruction on the question paper? Write in not more than 50 words. Nobody remembers this? Yeah, okay, thank you, Anil. So it would say write in not more than 50 words. And it used to be very annoying to read this, because half the time you were saying, Acha, let me just count and if it becomes 51, what is the word that I can cut? So this is the kind of pressure that would be put into you. And now I ask myself, since I'm no longer in school, why was there this pressure that it had to be written in 50 words, in not more than 50 words? And, I've thought about the answers, which I'm going to share with you, because I realized that this is so unfair. Why should you say not more than 50 words? Is this some kind of income tax limit? Is there some taxable limit? You write under 50 words, we will not charge you any kind of tax, no fines will be levied on you. Why can you not write in more than 50 words? Because, somewhere we need to recognize that as human beings, words are the only goods. Words are the only capital that we have. Only goods that we do not pay for. They're tax-free. We don't have to buy them. And our mind conjures them up. Our fingers write out on paper with ink that our parents pay for. So or pencils that they buy for us. So why should there be this precondition on the number of words? And I really need you to think very seriously about it. And whom does it help? It doesn't help the student. It never helps the student. And I don't know if you remember, but we used to have these Pressy writing skills in school. Sometimes you meet students who've not had Pressy writing ever, or who've not had Pressy writing. So Sankshep mein likhna is a new exercise. So, what is the Pressy writing exercise? You got a piece which was, say, 500 words. So you had to make a rough draft and, make it smaller, condense it, and then you take another fair draft where it, instead of 150 words, instead of 500 words, it became about 150 to 170 words. And then you had to think up a title. So this was an exercise that taught you how to condense ideas, So what is this exercise really telling you? It's actually telling you that if you want to think, if you want to write about something, and you want to move beyond the descriptive style, then you have to be discursive. You have to write in an analytic manner. You have to write more. You have to use more words to explain your argument, describe what you're thinking. You have to collect evidence. And this cannot work if your skills in language are only descriptive. So why is the student being asked to write briefly then? Why is the student these 50-word dialogues? 50-word answers. It's a huge dishonest experiment, because it benefits the teacher. And I'm not trying to suggest to you that the teacher is evil. The teacher is hapless. Teacher is overworked. There is too much pressure on the teacher to produce, to correct. And if there's a teacher who has to correct, let's say, minimum of 40 textbooks, 40 notebooks every day, it's quite killing. So this is an exercise that is very, very unfair to the student, unfair to the teacher, more unfair to the student, because the student never learns to stretch. The student never learns to write long answers. So short answer questions will be useful for correction by the harried and overworked teacher, who will find it very difficult to correct answer questions. of 40 students in a class. And if you think I'm making all this up, I want you to think again. Because, when we were growing up, we were taught how to write essays. This whole course that I'm taking for you in analytic writing, they taught us how to write essays. And writing an essay is this is the backbone of how to write an essay, is the backbone of analytic writing, because analytic writing is supposed to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And teaches this in middle school. Then 30 years ago, they just threw the essay out of the window. There is no essay writing at all. And this is such a terrible thing to do, because if you will not teach people to write essays in you will not teach them to think. And you will slow down their process of thinking, because the more one thinks, the better one gets at analysis. The sharper one's brain works. So, when I was about 12 or 13, I read this statement which said that people only use 10% of their brains. And I thought, this is such a cynical point of view. It's only now I've realized in retrospect that people use only 10% of their brains, because that is all the system trains them to do. System doesn't want them to use more than 10% of their brains. Essays don't exist in school. They've not been in the syllabus for over 3 decades. And I very firmly believe that unless you can stretch the brain, unless you can take it for a long walk and give it that exercise, the brain is not going to work to its optimum. And I firmly believe that the brain stretches when you write. The brain goes for a long walk when you start writing. When you start finding words to express your thoughts and your feelings, this is very, very important, because this is the only way in which you can record your thoughts, make sense of them, and develop them into an idea. Every thought is not an idea. It's a lot of thoughts in progression that give you an idea. And it is through ideas beings can express them in language. And you all know, we have these whole space of action. We have thought, action, and word. Thought, word, and action. So writing is action, by the way. Third category of activity that makes us human or makes us function, as it were. So the truth is that it's not true that we are bright or dull people, or that students are bright or dull. All students are dulled by this wretched methodology, and we discipline our most energetic and most enthusiastic students by giving them sentence quotes, by giving them word limit tax. So, it's time that we all recognize that we have never been taught to be Atmanirbhar with ideas, with words, language. We have not been taught to respect how powerful language is, how valuable language is, and what an important role it plays in human lives. So this is really where this whole workshop or conversation on analytical writing is seen as so important in the university, is seen as so important in the academic program, is seen as so central to education, as it were, because each one of us, as a student, as a learner, as a teacher, needs guidance in the form of writing. So how do we go about it? We at the university, this is to recognize that writing cannot be functional, writing cannot be descriptive. Writing is required not only to fulfill these functional or descriptive activities, writing is required for a whole range of, particularly in the university, for a whole range of assignments. So these could be reports, these could be problems, these could be questions, these could be this could be case study, these could be argumentative, debate, for instance. And all this, please note, has to do with something that is not functional. We moved from quantity to quality. We moved from the who, what, where, when formula that I offered to you as a symptom of descriptive writing. I'm going to stop for a minute and take a sip of water. Is there anybody who has a question? Anybody who would like me to clarify or explain something that I said? Yeah. Anyone who wants to say something? Any question? No, I sent you all to sleep. Okay. So how do we move from the who, where, what, why of writing to looking at the other functions of language, which are very important to us as academics, which are very important to us as university teachers, which are very important to us as students and learners as well. So, even if you are dealing with maths, even if you are dealing with, molecular biology, you are, whether you're a maths expert or a scientist, there is more writing to do at the university than perhaps anywhere else. So you could write an essay, you would be required to write an essay, you could do a literature review, although it's not a word I'm very fond of, or you could have short discussions in which you need to focus on academic writing, analytical writing, discursive writing. And so how do you create this piece of work? And in addition, even if you're, let's say, only writing up an equation or a formula or some study that you've done, discovered that a particular kind of mustard seed is what is most productive in, let's say, a particular farm. Even if you've discovered, let's say, a new hybrid, you still have to write down these equations, still have to write down these findings in the form of a test experiment and summation. So different kinds of assignments will call for different kinds of different styles of writing. The other interesting thing is with one assignment in any of these, whether it's a report or the essay or a blog post or problem question, you will use a variety of writing styles. You will be descriptive style. You will state your case, so you will say that this is what I'm working on at this point in time, and these are my raw materials, the who, what, when. That will come into place. But you will also have to use styles that are analytic and reflective. So what is it? What is it? Analytic and reflective style is about? You will have to just think a little more deeply about what you've read or what you're working with, what you're experiencing, what you've understood, what you've learned from. And I mean, I'm going to use a phrase which I never want you to use in academic writing or in analytical writing. Whatever you're reading, whatever has been the nature of your experience, whatever it is that you have learned, what is your take home from this input of information or from this data? Can't call it literature. What is your input from this later? It is all this that you have to cover, collecting, start putting down, start putting together for providing a meaningful conclusion, for providing a meaningful introduction, for providing a meaningful end to that you are writing. So this is what analytic writing is about. So you need to consider everything that you're writing very, very critically. And when I say critically, what do you mean? What do I mean by it? So you think critically about a situation. Don't be a passive spectator. Okay? Observe objectively, record objectively. Don't be passive. Don't be indifferent. Give it your 100%. For critical writing, critical thinking, critical analysis, you have to be on your toes, as it were. I mean, you have to be fighting fit. You have to be ready to participate in this particular arena. So, what is it is required of you with critical writing? The ability to view a topic from a variety of angles. That would be one thing. The ability to evaluate evidence, the ability to collate evidence, and the ability to also present a clear conclusion. To say, okay, all of you have said X, Y, and Z, all this information I have gleaned. So this is an argument that I am offering. And then you should also recognize that when you are writing an analytical piece, you also need to reflect on limitations of your own argument. Because, you might take a lot of perspectives and you might present a point of view, present a perspective, present a reading. It doesn't always have to be scientific. And you can also, say if it's some formula you arrived at, you can also show the steps by which you achieve that. But you need to remember that there can be other ways of reaching the same solution. There can be a way of doing what you're saying. So these are things that you need to take in and absorb as part of the uh, boundaries of whatever is the argument that you are presenting. So, when I say that there is a writing style that you need, there's a writing style that you need. Uh, there is certainly the requirement for an analytical and critical perspective, that whatever it is that you're writing about should take. So if you are, for instance, as if you are, for instance, writing about a text, and there was this there was Tripti who spoke about doing research on Sikh women's education, doing her PhD on Sikh women's education from JNU, from the sociology section. And she said that she realized that without learning the language, she was not going to be able to contribute adequately to women. So she had to learn Gurmukhi in order to record what was it that was Sikh women's education. She was very lucky that she had a grandparent who knew the language. So please look at what is going into her research. It's not only her own interest and engagement with the writing, it is her engagement with the literature, it is her engagement with the writing, it is her engagement with somebody who knows the language and who's familiar with it. So all this becomes or must have become part of her thesis. So it couldn't have been established. So it would be a piece of analytical writing. It would be a piece of analytical discursive writing. It would be a piece of analytical illustrated writing. So this is the kind of writing that is demanded. I'm really thankful one of you could allow me to, could give me this information to use it as an example. So, I mean, again, when you go back to the experience that I asked you to, the exercise that we all did, I asked you to, think one memory. So all of you gave me a memory, and some of you gave me reasons about why reading. Some of you told me about what happened. Some of you told me about how you never had an opportunity where you engaged with reading. Some of you said, I'm from a commerce background or I'm from a business background, and therefore I did not read. Some of you said that I was given books to read. I came from a background and then I opted out for a different kind of reading. And then we looked at the schooling system. So if you were to go back and just give a small descriptive account of yourself and look at your surroundings and also analyze the nature of the activity you are engaged in. I mean, this is a very simple analytical writing model that I'm setting to you. If you analyze whatever conversation we've had, what you think about it, what you learned or what you not learned, what you disagreed with, and suppose I say, okay, I now want you to sit and write a piece. You've had so many years of schooling, so many of you had years of teaching as well and research. Write a short paragraph on the whole space of online teaching, or write a short paragraph on the space and discussion. So you can sit back and write a paragraph. I'm only asking for a paragraph at the moment, because analytical writing, for writing a paragraph, shows the thought processes you went through, the experience that you went through, the sharing you went through, the discussion you went through to arrive at a given conclusion. It allows you to see the pros and cons. So analytical paragraph writing, I mean, suppose I were to say, how will you work with this? So this is going to be a descriptive writing on the basis of a certain outline. So what is the outline? Your own experience, your discussions, the conversations you heard in this seminar or in this workshop. So you can write a paragraph using people's information to present an argument. So this is really what a analytical paragraph writing is about. So you need to use description, you need to use data, and you need to discuss the data. So that is what analysis is about. And incidentally, an analytic paragraph won't stop at 50 words. It must at least have 50 words. Because what can 50 words? You can only describe. There's nothing discursive about 50 words. There is no space for analysis. There is no place for a critical evaluation. And this is why analysis is more important. So we have to stop counting out the words. We have to stop the word Russian altogether. And then, of course, the question is, what is the purpose of an analytic essay? Why must we have analytic writing? Analytic writing is something that helps you grow. It's something that helps you think. And when I say grow, I don't mean expansion of the waistline. Of course, that happens because writing is a sedentary. Or you sit at a desk and write, and clearly your stomach and your hips grow more. But that's really not the point that I was trying to make. It allows you to improve your own skills with language. It makes you better with words, and it improves your writing skills. It enhances your thought process, and because you've written it down, it also enhances your comprehension of a particular topic. Plus, you analyze something and you offer this information, so you are sharing this information with a group of people. It could be a conversation, it could be something written, whatever it is, something that benefits somebody more than yourself. And then if you're good enough or strong enough or committed enough, there are newspapers, there are journals, there are magazines, which will be happy to look at your critical analysis or look at the inputs you are giving to a particular event. And these type of essays may really help other people who are looking for some material on something or the other. It could be a very remote question about what happens if a butterfly is killed in the Amazon basin, or what is this butterfly wing flutter theory that can really cause a typhoon. So if you were to mention this, I mean, somebody somewhere in some corner who has access to this essay or to this argument that you have offered might be able to do something else with the idea. So it's really space in stretching so many other minds. You are expanding the potential to think, and you're allowing people to push ideas. It can happen in every discipline. It doesn't have to happen only with the sciences. It can happen in politics, it can happen in economics, it can happen in art, architecture, culture, sociology, and every subject of analysis. So an analytic essay, how is it different from a descriptive essay? The analytic essay is different from a descriptive essay because it is telling you about the author's point of view. So when you write an analytic essay, what you're providing is your point of view. Okay? And your point of view has to come not as an emotional outburst. It has to be supported by evidence, maybe books, other descriptive data, maybe film, maybe informative pamphlets. And you're going to use all this to cite them as evidence of your work. So therefore, what is it that you do? You can then expand into paragraphs. You can state the problem. You can start by making an interesting statement. Suppose, let's say you're writing a paper on, what shall we talk about? We shall talk about, the whole debate between, suppose you're writing, let's say, an essay on the sex war. I mean, this is a useful, provocative example. Suppose you're writing an essay on the sex war. You can begin by saying, I firmly believe that women are more powerful than men. It's an eyeball catcher, the title. And then you can go on to explain why. And then you can say that you're saying this from the position of, on behalf of women who have constantly been taught to believe that they're the second sex. Or you can quote Simone de Beauvoir's book and say, she's written this book called The Second Sex, because this is what she sees as the position of society. So this is going to be an essay which is going to start with, say, like the quotation from somewhere, or with a very powerful idea that people have heard about, and then it can build on that. Or it can use the same idea and attack it in many ways. So this is how your analytic essay will be very different from, let's say, a descriptive essay. Can I just give you a few pointers on how to write an analytic essay, and should we wind up with that? Will that be okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So the basic thing about an analytic essay, and this is very important because, as I said to you, they just decided we didn't need to be trained. We didn't need to think. We didn't need to be trained to write essays and turn into dangerous thinking people. So they threw it out of the school system 30 years ago. But an analytic essay is supposed to offer a point of view, is supposed to move from a main idea, is supposed to identify opposing arguments, and it can also be, if you have the time and you're not writing in an examination, this is how tutorials work for us, it can be supported by primary and secondary sources. So, how do you start writing an analytic essay? You need to have a topic. Okay, somebody has to give you a topic, and luckily, if you're an undergraduate student, then your teacher gives you the topic. So the exam questions give you the topic. If you are working for a dissertation, then you have to choose the topic. So once you choose a topic, also, think about what you're going to write. Choose a subject matter, and whatever you choose as your subject matter, whatever you think is going to be your point of view, you need to construct your essay around this central idea. Like, I use the battle between the sexes. We could look at the disadvantages of internet teaching, or the disadvantages of net university. All right, university teaching on the net. What do you think about it? So begin with the introductory paragraph in which you state the intent behind your essay. Introduce it, start with a quotation or with a rhetorical statement or a provocative statement, as it were. And when you introduce it, also say that this is really what you're going to be talking about. And after this introductory paragraph, divide your essay into smaller paragraphs that will look at so many subsections. So if you begin by saying that, if you say gender wars, begin by talking about the term gender, then talk about how it is supposed to refer to a battle between men and women. Then use a term like the second sex. Use phrases like, men are physically stronger, women are emotionally stronger. Look at these binaries. And what you really need to do is to argue out various aspects of this essay that you have started when you're talking about the gender wars. So divide your essay into smaller paragraphs, and each paragraph will deal with one idea, with another idea, for instance. And each of these paragraphs should add and expand the idea that you set up. And they should be constantly referring back to the gender wars or the battle between the sexes, as it were. So you can provide background information, you can provide personal experience, you can dig into some details, you can provide a contrasting viewpoint. If you're looking at text, this is all academic tradition in which you say, this is what I think, but Falan has said this. This is what I think, but earlier, this is what is right. You say, okay, can you imagine what X is saying? I disagree strongly with X. And this is X's argument, but I want to refute it. So these are things that you can do at the university level in an academic essay. As a matter of fact, the writer I did my PhD on, she says that from China to Chicago, this is really the pattern of academic writing, of analytical writing, because we are constantly trained to write in this particular manner. So while this definitely is a academic prescriptive space, one has to provide contrasting viewpoints, one has to refute earlier evidence, one has to provide background material, one also has to look at a certain history. So you can never come to do a piece of analytic writing unless you're writing for a journal that does not require references. You have to reference your writing. Let it be scholarly, let it show evidence of research, let it show evidence of wide reading, but let it not become pedantic. Okay, this is another thing that you need to remember when you're writing an analytical essay, or you will have a lot of information, and this is only going to happen when you start working and sifting through with your information. You have a lot of information, but all this information, your essay is not a peg on which all this information can be hung. It's not a clothes peg. It's not an ideas peg. So you have to only use that information that will support your argument. as truthfully as you can to support your argument. There's no need to be dishonest, there's no need to tell lies, but you have to also limit the information that you're going to provide. So, this is why one can then say that if there's something that you want to say, which you think is very important, but you don't want it part of the body of the essay, they invented the footnote for precisely this purpose. You send it to the footnote. And the number of paragraphs of your essay will depend on the scope of your essay. And I just said that, if you're writing one academic paragraph, you need about 100 to 120 words. So please remember that an essay is made up of many paragraphs. And normally, what is the prescription or what is the suggested number? They usually say 3,000 to 5,000 words. And the upper end journals, they start frowning if your essay is less than 5,000. So I'd say 3,500 to 8,000 is really the range of the academic essay, depending on who is publishing it. So this is something that you need to do. And the structure of the essay, very important of the essay. So plan the arrangement, plan it, see that the lines flow into each other, see that one idea is fully engaged with. Don't start with an argument, abandon it, and then go off, put in a whole lot of information, and then pick up the argument again. Complete the argument, move to the next one. So writing an essay should be like climbing up the flight of stairs. So you one step. You don't jump to the top step because can't be done unless you're Superman or Spider-Man, and then or Batman, and then you could hurt yourself very badly. Mentally, that is, because whoever is reading your essay will not be able to follow your argument. The other thing that you can do is your opening sentences, every paragraph can be very carefully written, so that particular topic is introduced from that paragraph onward, and it's also connecting to the main essay. Then you need to have evidence in your essay. So you have to information. You have to look at cultural practice if you're talking about the war between genders. You have to look at the private sphere. You have to look at the public sphere. You have to look at what this entails. You have to look at positions of power. You could look at terms of employment. You could look at who does all the work and who's paid all the money. All this is evidence that's available. And it's up to you to collect it. So again, this demands a lot of reading. And so what I said, you have to write a lot in order to write a little. In the same way, to write a lot, you have to read enormously. So these are also the demands that analytical writing makes for you, and it works very well. Intense reading is like doing like doing push, it's like doing planks. It's just building your core all the time. It's your bone. It's your brain that is shoring up, that is muscling, because you're filling it up with ideas and information and data, which, by the way, it's processing all the time. So you're not going to be able to convince your reader until you write enough and provide evidence to back up your argument. So whatever is your main point of analysis in an analytical essay, you have to back it up with primary sources, with secondary sources, and if there is important information that you feel has to be communicated to the reader, put in a footnote. Put it in an end note. You have footnotes and you have end notes. End notes are a little less annoying than the footnote, but this is a matter of personal choice. Sometimes you just want to look at an essay and read it and not be bugged by the footnotes. Sometimes you want to know what the footnote is about, so then it's a good idea to have an end note so you can go and actually refer to it there. So, hello, is all well?
All well.
Okay. All right. So, last thing that you can do is if you are saying something. Now, suppose for instance, I'm arguing that, let's take this story that Anil told us of seeing a Mahishasur temple in another part of India. Let me just remind you of that debate that we had, or that really ugly argument that we had with Smriti Irani saying that Durga was being humiliated because Mahishasur was being worshipped. So the point is that instead of making this a strident right-wing argument and saying women were being attacked, it would make sense to say, but look, Mahishasur is also worshipped in other cultures. So we can't have this bigoted position where worshipping, celebrating Mahishasur is abuse of women, because Durga is not a woman. She's a mythological construct. She's a goddess. You can't apply the law and say insult to female dignity, because there are people who are worshipping Mahishasur. So it's very important to acknowledge other points of view, because it helps you in your thinking, it helps you in your argument, it shows you to be a fairer person. It shows that you are not a bigoted person. And it's, even if you don't agree with that critical perspective, you still need to recognize that it exists, because that is really what analysis is about. Analysis is not pedagogy. It's not standing somewhere and declaiming. It's very important to remember that analytical thinking is always about a dialogue. It's initiating a conversation. It's initiating an exchange of ideas. And you can then later on go on, refute the analysis, recognize that the point of view exists. An analytical essay cannot be written. It's not, an oration. It's not demagoguery. It's not even classroom teaching. Because you have to show evidence of reasoning. You have to show evidence of balance. You have to show evidence of perspective. You have to show evidence of extensive understanding, because you have to, not point at one, you have to make this a complex concept. You have to make this a complex idea. An idea, an argument is not made up, is not one pointed. It can never be unidimensional. And finally, whether you're writing for somebody's pleasure, whether you're writing to share information, or whether it's, something you're doing in order to get another degree or a promotion, your essay must have a paragraph that caps argument, that reiterates your argument. Please do not repeat what you said in the beginning in the same words, but conclude your essay, your analytical essay, by drawing attention to what you began with, or end by supporting the substance or the entire structure that you have just created. So this more or less is input that I'm offering, or I have offered so far. What analytical writing is about, why we need it, why it's something very vital and very central to our lives as thinking, talking, speaking, reading humans. And I would also stress that analytical writing can only come if we engage with the ideas and thoughts of people. And very often we people who have ideas and who will not share thoughts, which is really why we need to fall back on literature. And by literature, I mean fiction, I mean poetry, I mean the prose essay, I mean the written word, I mean the drama, I mean the epic, I mean the story, all these narratives that exist, other than the technical, scientific, and empirical data that is also available to us. And of course, there are also powerful books written in this. There's this doctor called Siddharth Mukherjee who wrote about the Emperor of Maladies. It's a very powerful study of cancer. It's very moving. It is non-literature, non-fiction, but worthy of reading. There are autobiographies which are very, very inspiring, very, very challenging. Writers in different disciplines have written that. All this is stuff that we need to read, because somebody else's life work, whatever it is they've created, is something that adds value to us. And sometimes that could even be it could be a painting, it could be a work of art, it could be an amazing, architectural marvel. So we need to just explore in, as many dimensions as we can, because finally that will go back into our writing and that will strengthen the analysis of the dimensions that we are then preparing to offer. Having said this, I see that the clock is bearing down upon me and it is past the conference time. So thank you for listening, and thank you for also participating, all of you. I don't know about you, but I had a very nice time.
Thank you, Dr. Raman. Any question, please?
मैम हमें भी बहुत अच्छा लगा.
हाँ मैम, सेम हियर, वी एंजॉयड योर टॉक। और मैं कुछ एक चीज कहना चाह रही थी।
जरूर
यू वर टॉकिंग अबाउट द लैंग्वेजेस, है ना? और जब हम लैंग्वेज की बात करते हैं तो मैम अभी तक यू नो इट कि जो इंग्लिश है दैट इज वेरी डोमिनेट, है ना? नाउ इट हैज बिकम वेरी डोमिनेटिंग, ऑल्दो हमारी सारी लैंग्वेज है और हम सब लैंग्वेज डेफिनेटली स्कूल्स में भी आ रही हैं और लोग सीख भी रहे हैं, लेकिन इंग्लिश इज वेरी डोमिनेटिंग। बट टिल डेट आज भी आप अगर देखेंगे तो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स पढ़ाई जाती है और जब स्टैंडर्ड में आ जाता है तो तब जाकर उसको इंग्लिश का एबीसी करवाए। ये जब मैं बचपन में थी, यानी कि जब व्हेन आई वाज इन फर्स्ट स्टैंडर्ड और सिक्स स्टैंडर्ड अभी तक है, तो क्या आपको नहीं लगता कि वी शुड कुछ और डिफरेंट होना चाहिए, कुछ और इन चीजों को रिवाइज करना चाहिए ताकि हमारे बच्चे जो हैं वो अपडेट हो सके? डू यू थिंक सो? आई डू एग्री कि हम यहाँ पर वो चीज नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम एकेडमिक राइटिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, बट राइटिंग इम्प्रूव्स व्हेन यू लर्न वर्ड्स, एज यू से कि जितना हम रीडिंग करते हैं, जितना लर्निंग करते हैं, देन ओनली इट इम्प्रूव्स। तो अगर हमारा बचपन ही उसी चीज में होगा, ग्रास रूट लेवल से ही चलेगा, देन ओनली वी कैन अपडेट आवरसेल्फ।
आई एग्री विद यू कंप्लीटली सुनीता। पता है मैं बहुत बार सोचती हूँ इस विषय में, तो मैं आपसे आपके साथ शेयर करती हूँ। आपको पता है हम दिल्ली में जहाँ रहते हैं, हर एरिया में, साउथ दिल्ली में एटलीस्ट मैं आपको बता सकती हूँ, बारात घर हैं। हैव यू नोटिस्ड? देयर आर बारात घर्स, देयर आर एवरी कम्युनिटी, every community has a sort of space which is working as a barat ghar. आप अगर ये हाउसिंग कॉलोनीज में जाएंगे, द्वारका, पटपटगंज वगैरह, उनके पास एक पूरा ग्राउंड एरिया है जहाँ पे which they allow you to hold these kinds of function. पर हमारे शहर में, आई एम टॉकिंग नाउ अबाउट न्यू दिल्ली, लाइब्रेरी के लिए जगह ही नहीं है। तो आप बताइए कि हम भाषाओं में क्या सुधार ला सकते हैं, क्योंकि हमें अपने इतिहास पे, हमारी कहानियों पे, हमारी भाषाओं पे किसी प्रकार का हम में गर्व नहीं है। वी हैव नो प्राइड इन आवर लैंग्वेजेस। और हमारी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का ये वन पॉइंट व्यू है कि जी भाई बारात घर कर दो, शादियां हो जाएंगी वहां पे, हमारी आबादी जो है वो बढ़ जाएगी। पर ये बढ़ती हुई आबादी अपने वक्त के साथ क्या करेगी, ये तो हम सोचते ही नहीं है। We have no places for our children to play. We have no places for our children to learn anything. This is the true story of our government schools. This is the true story of our public spaces. So if we want some change, we have to work like this. We have libraries. इतनी सैड लाइब्रेरीज हैं। एक मातृ मंदिर में मेरे घर के पास एक लाइब्रेरी है, और फिर आर्य समाज में छोटे छोटे कमरों में गंदे लोहे की अलमारियों में किताबों को तालों में रख रखते हैं। और वहां पे कौन आर्य समाज मंदिर में जो आईएएस एस्पिरेंट्स हैं वो जाके किताबें पढ़ते हैं। तो द आइडिया ऑफ अ लाइब्रेरी कि एक ऐसी जगह हो जो खुली हो, जो सुंदर हो, जहाँ पे एक बच्चा जाके बैठ के पढ़े, ये तो है नहीं। बम्बई शहर में मैंने देखा है, इन द हार्ट ऑफ द सिटी, in what is the fourth city, the fourth section, there is this public library which has been provided for poor children. There are benches with lights and a roof where they can sit with their books and read. And it's not really a library, it's a reading room. आप मुझे दिखाइए कहीं पे reading rooms? रीडिंग रूम का तो कोई मतलब ही नहीं है। वी हैव नो वैल्यू, वी हैव नो रिस्पेक्ट फॉर द रीडिंग रूम, वी हैव नो रिस्पेक्ट फॉर प्ले, वी हैव नो रिस्पेक्ट फॉर रीडिंग। तो हम व्हाट काइंड ऑफ पीपल आर वी रेजिंग, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ जनरेशंस आर वी ब्रिंगिंग अप? एंड इट्स टेरिफाइंग। एंड मैंने आप में से किसी के साथ बात करी क्लास में, हम बुक खाते हैं बच्चों प्राइमरी स्कूल में, जैसे कि ये कोई भगवान की मूर्ति हो, तो आप जाओ अपने हाथ जोड़ो और या तो माथा टेको और फिर चले जाओ। दिस इज आवर एटीट्यूड टू बुक्स। तो इसे हम कैसे चेंज करेंगे? हमारे पे एक बहुत बड़ी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, क्योंकि हम एजुकेटर्स हैं और हमने तो सॉफ्ट ऑप्शन ले लिया है। हमने कहा हम पहले सबको 18 साल रगड़ने देंगे, उसके बाद हम अपने ये फिर कहेंगे। और मैं तो आई शुड बी गोइंग टू स्कूल्स एंड सेइंग दिस। I've tried at the school where I studied. But unless we start doing this in groups, unless we start telling people how important this space is, how valuable languages are, it's never going to happen. And increasingly, I find, students, my son was in 8th class, he came up to me and said, I have these choices that my teacher has given me. I said, what are these choices? He said, my teacher told me, see a film and write a review of the film, or read a book and write a review of the book. So I said, and what have you chosen to do? He said, Mama, मैं आपको जानता हूँ, आप तो फिल्म नहीं देखने देंगी मुझे, तो मैंने बोला कि I will read a book. तो आपको book दे दो. And I was just thinking that if as a school teacher who's teaching a language, you can tell children see a film and write a review. Then the first thing you should be telling is, नहीं reading habit, तो फिर काम कितना बढ़ जाता है ना, और जो valuable input है वो कितना कम हो जाता है. So, I mean, we have to plan and see how we can, our wealth is our languages. Our wealth is our bhasha literatures. मेरे को इंग्लिश से कोई तकलीफ नहीं है, सुनीता. I mean, it's not as if I was born thinking that जी अंग्रेजी में मेरे से करना. It so happened that जो हालात थे उसमें I just turned out to be very good with the language. But it's not that I don't look at other languages, it's that I don't recognize how valuable any literature is. And why is it valuable? Because hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, some people thought in this particular manner. So I really understand where I am and what I'm doing unless I know what they thought, unless I try and analyze what is it that they were saying. And that makes me, that gives me more human inputs and nothing else. So, it's like, this is what we can do in terms of thinking, and maybe should try and make small groups in our own localities and try and talk about the relevance of it. Children, that the most valuable thing they can do is, invest in a book.
Right. That's right. I agree.
Thank you, Dr. Raman, for your enriching
ma'am.
and explorative talk, which has incorporated personal narratives, history of language, culture, sociological premises with educational truths, and helped all of us build an understanding of academic writing and how to write analytically. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And have a very nice evening, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Right.
And I think all of us can now spend some time with the open session with Dr. Yukti Sharma.
Thank you, Dr. Veena. Hi, and thank you very much, Dr. Ratnam. I attended your entire session. I'm Yukti from Department of Education and also an academic secretary in IIIL. Hi. So,
all right, great.
Discipline education, inclusive education. It was lovely listening to your discourse on language. I mean, you have actually covered a broad canvas of issues, which are related to language, starting from school education to, higher education. So thank you very much for the session.
Thank you, Yukti. And okay, so should I at this point?
You can stay if you like, but if you're tired, you can rest also.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'm happy to stay.
Okay, everybody, this is the time for the open session. Anything that you'd like to share with us? Otherwise, Yukti and I have got a little planned agenda for all of you to discuss. Anything? Are you all there? I'm always apprehensive when I see all these icons because I keep on wondering are you all there?
So, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank God.
Ma'am.
Right. I'm so glad. Ma'am. So what would you like to add to the 3 days discussion that we've had on 3 days of the various genres of academic writing? We could discuss that, and then Yukti and I could add on the kind of assignments we are sort of hoping that you'll all be ready to do, and which I think will benefit all of you. So anything you'd like to share, guys?
Yeah, any feedback that you'd like to give us? I mean,
I think to add to take
say something. डॉक्टर सुनीता आप कुछ कहना चाह रही हैं?
हाँ मैम, मैं ये कहना चाह रही थी, आपको मालूम है पीछे थोड़ा सा जो 26 जनवरी को देयर वर सम रॉयट्स एंड ऑल दैट, और उसकी वजह से कुछ एरियाज में पर्टिकुलरली नेटवर्क बंद कर दिया गया था, तो देयर वाज प्रॉब्लम टू अटेंड द वर्कशॉप. तो इट्स अ रिक्वेस्ट, अगर हमें रिकॉर्डेड सेशंस मतलब जो भी सेशंस की रिकॉर्डिंग है, इट कैन बी प्रोवाइडेड टू अस फॉर मतलब हमारा इट्स अ ट्रेजर वाज बेसिकली फॉर अस. तो अगर आगे भी ये चीज कुछ ऐसी पॉसिबल हो जाए तो
डेफिनेटली दैट अच्छा ये सुझाव है। हम रिकॉर्डेड सेशन उसी दिन रात को दे दें, ऐसा कुछ कर सकते हैं हम डॉक्टर वीना?
We could do it later yet, but we'll definitely try and we'll talk to amongst each other and get
talk
back
to
to
the
you.
director also,
We'll
and
get back.
we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
We
Thank
will.
you.
We will. Don't worry. We understand.
I agree.
We
Thank you,
understand.
ma'am. Thank you so much.
Any other feedback that you would like to give? So we had actually 3 days, and we had around 4 sessions. We had 5 resource persons since the first day, and inaugural we also had, I mean, uh, 3 guests. So we have interacting with many people. So कुछ भी आप feedback देना चाहें, we would really welcome it. You all are colleagues, and in fact, we think that whatever suggestions, I mean, you all would give, it would further strengthen the the programs that we are planning at IEEE, and it would be really helpful because it's your own institute. It belongs to the university only. So, any feedback that you would like to give?
Ma'am, I would like to thank Ratna ma'am for this very interactive session. But because it has been said that analytical writing, style of writing is the backbone of academic writing. So I think I personally will be thankful if you will have one more session on this workshop, if you can have.
One more session. I think Dr. Veena would be Dr. Veena would be able to lead. I think she has already planned all the sessions.
We've planned the 5 day sessions, and we can think of an added one later on. But at the moment, we've got it planned, and our resource person are ready, and we'll finish this, and then we'll go to the next one. If you we need an added session on analytical writing, we'll do that.
Actually, it's just a 5 day workshop. So, Dr. Preeti, accommodation, I hope you understand, it's a little difficult to accommodate a new session. And because it's a 5 day thing, so already Dr. Veena has planned with all the resource persons and they have confirmed. So,
Absolutely, ma'am.
We'll think about it later, not in this. We can't do
maybe
that right now. We understand
maybe
your
a
point.
second part of this piece could be planned because it's so welcoming. All the sessions have been very good. Any other feedback that you would like to give about the assignment also, because the assignment has also been posted in the Google Classroom.
We'll everybody will be the 4 resource person will be posting an assignment, a practice assignment for you to do over the weekend, maybe with readings as well. And at the end of this 5 day workshop, there will be an assignment on the maybe 1,000 to 1,500 word assignment that we'll post, and that will you'll get a week to do that, and which will be assessed not marks but qualitatively, and given and you'll be given feedback by the resource person, which will help, I think, benefit you. So that will be planned. There's a practice assignments for over the weekend, and one longer assignment after the workshop to actually help you to get an understanding and incorporate all the feedback and the understanding that you built in the workshop and use that for writing. That's why we joined the workshop in the first place. So we'll do that. Rekha, please.
हाँ, आपका सेशन आज का बहुत अच्छा लगा। बहुत अच्छे से उन्होंने लैंग्वेज के बारे में और किस तरह से हम अपने बच्चों को एनरिच कर सकते हैं लिटरेचर की तरफ मोड़ का, बहुत ही बढ़िया रहा।
सही कह रही हैं रेखा जी, रियली बहुत अच्छा है। ऑब्जर्वेशन जो मैं आप सबके साथ जो मैं कल से सेशन को परसों सुन रही हूँ, बीच में नेटवर्क इशू हुआ था जो सुनीता बिकॉज ऑफ द 26 जनवरी। आज भी जो मैंने सुना रत्ना जी का और उसके बाद आप सबके रिस्पॉन्सेज जो सुन रही थी मैं, आई मीन इट वाज अ ग्रेट लर्निंग एक्सपीरियंस फॉर मी because I am from school education, and the issues related to language are always there in school education, and it actually seeps in for science education also, for maths education also, because language is a medium everywhere in every subject. अभी जो सुन के मुझे लग रहा था कि हमने जब ये एकेडमिक राइटिंग का सोचा था, तो एक एलिमेंट जो हमारे डायरेक्टर ने भी इनॉग्रल में भी बोला था कि हमने भाषा को लिमिट करने का नहीं सोचा, एंड वी थॉट कि जो लोग हिंदी में भी लिखना चाहते हैं वो भी इसको ज्वाइन करें, चाहे हमारे रिसोर्स पर्सन कोई एक पर्टिकुलर भाषा का प्रयोग करें बिकॉज दे कम फ्रॉम इंग्लिश, बट अगर आप लोग हिंदी में बोलना चाहते हैं और हिंदी में लिखना भी चाहते हैं अपने असाइनमेंट, so please let us know. I mean, feel free to use a particular language.
I think that's a very
लोगों ने हिंदी में अपने आप को बहुत अच्छे से व्यक्त किया है। शायद इंग्लिश में वो इतना व्यक्त ना करके, तो लैंग्वेज बैरियर नहीं बनना चाहिए कहीं भी, बिकॉज एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ एनी लैंग्वेज इज important, whether it's English, Hindi, or any other language.
Don't worry about your medium of expression. Please express yourself either in Hindi or in English, and it that will go in your this thing for academic writing. Please don't even bother about English में होना चाहिए, Hindi में होना चाहिए. It's just fine. Write and express. Be analytical, be critical, and write a research proposal, but it will be done in a language in which you feel comfortable. Please.
Yes. Please free to tell us also if you want our assignment to be that assignment that has been given. अगर आप चाहते हैं कि इसको हम हिंदी में भी ट्रांसलेट करके दें, तो वो अभी बता बीना जी हम सकते हैं ये, क्योंकि मैंने देखा है बोल रहे हैं. It's very good. I mean, we need people who speak good Hindi also and write good Hindi also. In fact, I used to write mostly in English. After from the last 3 years, there are some organizations who have started doing, conferences and seminars in Hindi. Especially the Azim Premji Foundation has started doing science seminars in science education in Hindi. So actually, I participated, and I would also like to share this with Ratna ji that I started writing in Hindi. But as she was very right in her discourse, beginning somewhere I was writing and writing in Hindi. So and somewhere I felt that let me restrict my ideas and not think in English. मैं हिंदी में ही सोचती हूँ, और तब जब मैं लिख रही थी तो मैं ज्यादा बेहतर लिख पा रही थी. बट जब मैं इंग्लिश में सोच के हिंदी में ट्रांसलेट करके लिख रही थी तो मुझे लग रहा था कि भाषा बड़ी अच्छी बन गई. तो
Tilted हो जाती है फिर.
हाँ, बिल्कुल नहीं ठीक रहती. जिसमें लिखना है उसी में सोचना है.
बिल्कुल. तो मैंने 3 आर्टिकल्स अभी तक हिंदी में लिखे हैं. एक विज्ञान शिक्षा पे है, एक शिक्षा पे है, और एक गणित शिक्षा पर है. तो तीनों ही लिखने में मुझे तीसरे तक आने तक मुझे थोड़ा सा कॉन्फिडेंस आ गया कि मैं पूरी तरह से हिंदी में लिख सकती हूँ बिना ट्रांसलेट किए. तो मुझे थैंक यू रत्ना जी. तो मुझे लगता है कि ये लैंग्वेज बैरियर नहीं होने की, और शायद कोई सी भी एज पे एक शिक्षा पे रहे तो हम को जैसे रत्ना जी कह रही थी उस पर फोकस करके डेवलप कर.
मैम आई वुड लाइक टू ऐड इनटू दिस कि कई बार हम हायर एजुकेशन में स्टूडेंट को ये कहते हैं कि क्योंकि आपके पास स्टडी मटेरियल हिंदी में अवेलेबल नहीं होगा, फॉरेन ऑथर्स या फिर इंडियन ऑथर्स ने उस टॉपिक पर नहीं लिखा है, तो इट्स बेटर कि आप एमए या पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन में 3rd ईयर तक आते आते अपने आप को अपग्रेड करो इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज की तरफ. तो इस हम यहाँ ये वर्कशॉप की शुरुआत, ये लिखने की शुरुआत हिंदी मीडियम में कर रहे हैं, तो I think it will help or motivate the teachers to write or create the repository in Hindi also. So
that's true.
तो हमारे
हाँ जी रेखा जी.
हाँ, ये बेटर रहेगा अगर आप असाइनमेंट्स हिंदी में अगर हम दे सकते हैं तो ये बड़ी अच्छी बात है.
बिल्कुल रेखा जी, बिल्कुल. भाषा बिल्कुल बैरियर नहीं है ILLL के प्लेटफॉर्म पे, और इनफैक्ट हमारी पूरी यूनिवर्सिटी में नहीं है. मैं डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एजुकेशन की हूँ. हम स्टूडेंट्स को हमेशा चॉइस देते हैं. अगर वो हिंदी में लिखना चाहते हैं तो वो शिक्षा क्या, रिसर्च शोध का भी जो हमारा एमएड लेवल पे जो पेपर है वो भी वो हिंदी में लिखते हैं. हालांकि वो बड़ा कठिन होता है क्योंकि टेक्निकल टर्म्स हिंदी में मिलते नहीं है, पर हम कोशिश हमारी पूरी रहती है. और अब तो इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन के ज़माने में किसी भी तरह का कोई बैरियर नहीं होना चाहिए. तो हम बिल्कुल ट्रांसलेट करके असाइनमेंट गूगल क्लासरूम में ट्रांसलेटेड वाला भी देंगे. मतलब ट्रांसलेटेड तो नहीं होना चाहिए, उसको हिंदी में परिभाषित करेंगे. और मेरे ख्याल से हमारा जो पहला सेक्शन इंट्रोडक्शन पे था, इसीलिए हमने 2 एक्सपर्ट, एक हिंदी के थे और एक इंग्लिश के थे, ताकि दोनों भाषाओं का रिप्रेजेंटेशन हो सके उसमें.
We'll try our best to accommodate. Don't you worry on that score. Any other suggestion?
Thank you so much, Veena ji. Thank you so much. Anything else you would like to say? This is what came in my mind. और भी कुछ अगर आप कहना चाहते हैं.
मैम मुझे गूगल क्लासरूम का लिंक नहीं आया या कोड आप शेयर
वो उस पे है जो हमारा जो ग्रुप बनाया है ना व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप, उसमें
मिस्टर अनिल ने अपना वो जीमेल वाला अकाउंट दिया, उसके लिए ना जीमेल अकाउंट चाहिए, अदरवाइज वो एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रहा गूगल क्लासरूम.
हाँ, अनिल ने नहीं
ना एक ना जीमेल
अभी मैंने
आ जाएगा, देन यू विल बी एबल टू गेट एडेड. दूसरी बात जो जल्दी से हम कर सकते हैं, आई नो यू ऑल मस्ट बी वेरी टायर्ड सिंस 3 o'clock वी ऑल आर अटेंडिंग. जो वीना जी अभी कह रही थी कि what we are thinking is actually, we are thinking that, whatever assignments you are writing, we are saying this at this point, because then, that seriousness comes into us, when we know that it has got a destination to go to. So if suppose we think of documenting what assignments you are doing, because you all are colleagues, we are not here to assess or judge each other. We are here to give feedback to each other. So if our experts would give feedback and you develop those assignments, and we can document it as an exemplary piece of research writing or academic writing or whichever kind of writing you want to engage in within the academic writing. So it becomes an exemplary piece, which is an outcome of this workshop. Would be able to document it in a form. I mean, it's just an idea I floated. I can talk to the director also about it and then get back to you, but I wanted to know your views on it.
आई थिंक जो क्वेश्चन है शायद उसको हेल्प करेगा आपके आंसर उसके करने में कि मैम कोई डेडलाइन है हमारे ये की जो हमने गूगल क्लासरूम पे प्रोजेक्ट या
वो उसका तो है थोड़ा सा, लाइक अभी जो है वीकेंड के लिए, एंड देन द लास्ट असाइनमेंट विल बी गिवन अ वीक फॉर इट, बट वी कैन एक्सटेंड इट फॉर मे बी 10 days, बट यस, पर जो अगर जब ये हम इसके बाद डिस्कस करके या देखते हैं तो उसके बाद we can also give you suggestions to improve, and then it can take some time, but not unlimited time. You see, everything has a shelf life and has a worth to it. We can't say unlimited time ले लीजिए जो मर्जी करके दे दीजिए. Some time will be a time limit, and understand the time limit as teachers.
मैम देन आई वुड लाइक टू, क्योंकि मेरा सैटरडे संडे को में क्लास है, मुझे एक या दो एक्स्ट्रा दे दीजिए.
इसमें इतने भी हम मीन मेक नहीं निकालने वाले कि हम 2 दिन भी तुम्हें दे सकते. रिलैक्स करो. इतना कोई, एंड नोबडी कैन चेक दैट फास्ट दैट हम बोलेंगे अभी दे दिया और अभी हम आपको फटाफट दे देंगे. नथिंग लाइक दैट. यू डू योर वर्क, but you just can't have unlimited time for anything. That doesn't work, and that as teacher unlimited time का कभी worth नहीं रहती है. It doesn't make any sense.
It then never happens actually. If we get in limited time, we actually will get lost in time actually then.
और वो मतलब worth नहीं रहेगी. Let's not think of something so unlimited that उसकी worth खत्म हो जाए and it become meaningless. We won't do that.
Yeah, first draft you have given in time. First draft, if you give all the assignments in time, and that draft from Google Classroom will have the experts' comments and feedback, and then further improvement can be done beyond that point. But then that time also needs to have some time commitment to it. Only then we will be able to bring it together and document it.
Yes.
And maybe we could, request our experts also to give their some piece of writing also within that. I don't know what form it would be into, but it would definitely be we would be collating it together and making it so that it could be disseminated to other people in the university also. If it comes in the form of maybe a e-document or a hard copy,
everybody
also.
will learn from it, isn't it? So it'll be very engaging. You will all learn from it, and I think it'll be a worthwhile piece to do. Just apna karo, enjoy doing it all. Writing is very very beneficial to for all of us.
Yes. And I also see there is a diversity of participants.
Yes.
I mean, you all are from different disciplines. So if we have a piece of academic writing in every discipline, we could show, that how academic writing differs or is similar in different disciplines. So that also would bring different disciplines in terms of academic writing into one document, which is also, I think, should be one of its kind. So quickly,
I
if you could
think
share your views.
you
on
can
that.
all think about it, mull over it. Mulling is always a good idea.
Yeah. Yes. That's a good idea.
Okay. Question? Any other feedback that you'd like to give, or then we can sort of bye for today. Meet again on Monday.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.
See you on
Bye.
Monday.
Take care. See you. Bye, Dr.
Bye
Nandini.
bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye bye. Bye everybody.